Good evening, Holliston, and welcome to the October 9th meeting of the Holliston School Committee. It's 7:04, and we are ready to begin. I think we'll start with the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor? That passes. We'll move right on to report from student representatives. We've got sorry, blanked me. Amelia and Luke.
So tonight is senior night for football versus Hopkinton, and it's the 75th meeting tonight with our student section carrying on the traditional theme of Blackout to celebrate the seniors.
And then for the second senior night this week, cross country just took place yesterday afternoon, with the girls team finishing up an impressive season with a win, and Max Harrington on the boys side taking home the boys course record back from Hopkinton. So hopefully the football team can emulate that success tonight.
And finishing up for sports, the boys varsity soccer team is ranked within the top 20 for all of Massachusetts currently.
The new senior privilege that began this week, allowing students to leave in the event their teacher is absent, seems to be working out very well and has been received very well by the students so far.
Next upcoming week, on October 15th, the sophomores and juniors will be taking the PSAT in the morning, and seniors will be given a day to explore post-secondary options, whether that be touring colleges or completing college applications, and freshmen will be attending an assembly for a presentation by Holliston alum Jesse Green, the Machine, promoting unique career paths, and then working with school counselors on the post-secondary planning process, which will help students begin thinking about their goals and future pathways.
Today at the high school around midday, there was a presentation on the Sandy Hook Promise, and this gave students a time to reflect on the inclusiveness and safety of the community we were building in school, and this was followed by an evacuation drill, and it all went smoothly.
The homecoming dance is next Friday. The theme is Wild Wild West, and so students are getting their cowboy hats and boots to be ready to have a fun time next week.
Just for some upcoming events, National Honor Society Trick-or-Treating for Canned Goods is happening soon, and students will be putting info flyers on doors throughout Holliston for this next week.
And then another upcoming thing is Dumpster Day fundraiser for the class of 2026. It's taking place on October 25th, and you can sign up through their Instagram to have your trash and junk removed. It's going to be helpful for the upcoming holiday season, so that will happen on Saturday. So make sure to sign up to support the class.
That's all from us. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. School committee individual comments?
Nothing for me. Nothing for me.
So I would just like to recognize that on Tuesday marked the second anniversary of the October 7th terrorist attacks in Israel, and while that is very far away from our community, we continue to see incidents of hate and anti-Semitism in the United States and in our community. I think, luckily, we haven't had anything specific to Holliston recently, at least not that I've heard of, but these are still issues that we're battling with here, and we need to keep that in mind and continue to look for ways to show leadership and work on these things as we progress. So I just wanted to recognize that, and make that as my comment. So thank you.
Thank you.
No additional comment.
Okay, and none for me. So do we have a couple people for public comment, I think? Did you? Yeah.
Anybody in here that hasn't signed up yet?
That wants to.
Yep.
Yep, you can just come
Right
sit
up where
at
the student
microphone.
rep mic is.
Yeah. Yep.
Sorry.
And just state your name and address and.
Sure. I'm Lindsay Yaroshevich. I live at 29 Pondview Road here in Holliston. And then I just say the
And you
thing I
can-
want to say?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think at a recent meeting, it was talked about whether or not the school committee, school board official committee, you guys, should review the school calendar. And so parent in town, I just put out a really, really simple petition just to see if families were interested in it being up for conversation. Do you guys already all know all this? No? Okay, great. So it has 229 signatures. It's been up for 48 hours. So I just, basically, I think that was it. That was like, it was just a litmus test to see if this is something that people are interested in talking about. And it seems like at least 229 members of the community with kids in the school system are interested. So I think.
Was there any particular part of the calendar schedule that was of interest? I mean, we've had lots of conversations about the calendar in the past. I'm just curious if the petition was about anything specific.
Yeah, it just said that the idea is, it's so hard because people are pretty, I'm like a little nervous because people were a little rotten for the couple days, and it shouldn't really be a rotten thing. I think the idea is we want something that's really, really fair for all the kids. And for some kids, that's continuity, that they get to go to school regularly 5 days a week. And for other families, it's about getting their holidays off, all of which is important. So all it just said is like, is there a better solution than what we're doing right now? And so some other districts in Massachusetts just do federal holidays because then there's no onesie twosies. It's not, oh, mine isn't in, mine is, right? It could just be federal holidays. Some people brought up stuff about the professional development days, which is another thing that disrupts continuity. I was really trying to get people to not try to solve or position something, but instead just that it's an important topic, especially at the beginning of the school year. I noticed it. We have kids right now in the Miller School and the Ram School, but we've had kids through all 4 of the schools. And my youngest said to me, like when he had to go to school for 5 days this week, he's like, what? I was like, yeah. He's like, it's a full week. He's like, well, it's next week. And I was like, no. And so for my older kid in Rams who struggles and needs the continuity, that's where it really, especially at the beginning of the year when they don't have it, it is just tough because they get used to a 4-day week. And so and I just wanted to see if other families felt the same way, but it really wasn't to try to push an exact solution. I just think it's worth investigating. And you guys are the people, I think, to investigate. So I don't think I need to give you a solution, right? I just have to show you that we're interested in talking
Most people
about
give
it.
us lots of solutions. But that doesn't mean... No, you don't need to give us a solution.
No.
But,
Okay.
yeah.
So now am I free to go?
You're free to go. Thank you.
And then how do you find out if you guys care? After everybody leaves, you say, like, do we care about the thing? And then you'll decide? Or do you need anything?
So we need to end up putting it on an agenda to have a discussion about it.
Got it.
So you can make the comment, we can listen to you and
Perfect.
understand.
And then
what
you
you're
guys can
saying.
decide if it gets on a future agenda.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Actually, Sarah decides if it's on a future agenda.
Don't put it on.
I smell another subcommittee coming out, man.
Well, I do think it's worth considering putting on a future agenda, but there are a lot of factors, and one of the also
Next
is
day.
what?
We're next.
Well, who's
We're
next?
discussing it.
We're not discussing it. Okay. I'm going to talk to Lou today.
Did you want to make a? Sure.
Prepared something and I wasn't sure I wanted to speak or not tonight, but after your comment, I just wanted to support the idea of relooking at the calendar for the 2026-27 school year. I think the current calendar may unintentionally create challenges for neurodivergent students who need routine, as well as for families with limited resources. It's important to recognize that DEI extends beyond race and religion to include individuals with disabilities, neurodivergence, women, and those from low-income backgrounds. And I think the current school calendar may not fully reflect this broader perspective, which is why I'm in support of the school committee reconsidering the calendar, not just the religious holidays, but the current structure of the professional development days within the calendar presents a challenge. I don't believe the petition in question is targeting any specific group, but but rather it seeks to initiate a dialogue with the school committee to look at our calendar with a broader perspective. Ultimately, it's an opportunity to expand and deepen the DEI conversation within our schools and work towards solutions that better support the whole community.
That was so much better than mine. You should have gone first. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone on Zoom? No? Okay. Is there anyone else that wanted to make a public comment? Okay, great. Thank you. So at this point, do you mind if we have David Liss go first for the district presentation? Or do you?
You can have Karen go first, because I'm going to stay for the...
Well,
Or
the only issue...
However, I want you to be able to get back to the
High school.
high
I think
school stuff.
the issue is David has to be part of both
Okay.
presentations.
Okay.
And the data and assessment kind of leads into the
Got it.
second presentation, otherwise we wanted
All
to...
right,
yeah.
that's
I heard David say you wanted to stay until the very end, so
okay. So at this point,
If you want to put it up, yes.
What keep this to?
I just want to get it.
No, I don't have a white. It's like
oh no. Do you want hand sanitizer?
Just have tissues.
Actually, I have some. Go ahead, why don't you start? It's got a broken pen all over it. so-
Oh no.
Oh, no, that's
All right, good evening, everyone. Happy to be back again presenting our, I think it's our third year of this presentation. So we try to fine tune it and tweak it. And tonight you're going to see we're going to lead into especially Mr. List's presentation with some of the data. So, and then of course we have some newcomers on the school committee. So happy to answer any questions at the end as well.
Yes, and I'll jump in to the agenda on the next slide.
Okay.
So we, again, compared some of the same data that we've done in the past. We looked at our 8 comparison districts that we've used for past, and you'll see the list when we move forward. We have looked at U.S. News and World Report each year, and just a reminder that that data is from 22-23, where the other data is current, so it's, already 2 years previous data, so it's not current in, compared to the other data. Niche is current, Boston Magazine is current. MCAS is based on the spring testing, and then we'll talk about some recommendations based on the data as well. So these are the 8 comparable districts, and we did it, this is what we've been doing the past few years. We can certainly look at, there are DART districts that the DESE picks as well, but these ones are in our vicinity, so these are the ones we've used the last few years.
All right, so we'll start with U.S. News, the one that seems to get the most publicity. Again, just a reminder, this is 2-year-old data. College readiness is the big one, 30%. Basically AP exams. It's very heavy on AP exams and very heavy on qualifying scores, which are 3, 4, and 5. And Mr. Liss is going to be highlighting that current data, so we believe there's hope that this ranking will improve. And then you have the state assessment proficiency, which is MCAS. Performance is, again, based on demographics, underserved students, and college curriculum, and then graduation rate. But again, the bulk of this is AP exams, and you're going to see that on our scorecard in a minute. All right, so here's where we are this year. Again, based on 22-23 data, ranked 78. You can see the comparison districts. We did slide in this ranking. We were 62 last year. Again, that's, when I say last year, that's 3-year-old data. And 2 other districts also slid as well. And then here's our scorecard. This highlights very clearly at the top. Those are the 2 biggies. The 66% that take at least one AP exam, and then passing is weighted very heavily. and then the proficiencies on the MCAS are the other percentages, graduation rate at the bottom.
MCAS.
MCAS, yeah, 9th and 10th grade only, but yes, MCAS. All right, we're going to swing into niche. This is what we believe is more current, based on 24-25 data. And there's a lot of parts to this ranking, as you can see. We're going to dive into the top one, which is academics, which is 50% of the ranking. So the next slide will break that 50% down right here. So again, state assessment proficiency is 33% of that 50%. And you can see graduation rate. The AP is in there, but it's, you know, a tiny fraction compared to U.S. News. So again, these rankings are a little bit, we're going to show you what we think is a powerful slide of another school district in a few minutes, just to show you the rankings are really interesting when you compare them side by side. But anyway, I highlighted these in red because I wanted to demonstrate that these methodologies also change every year. So this one didn't change a ton, but you can see how last year they called it a top colleges score. It was 17.3%. So this year they've broken that down into two other ones, top popular college score and top enrolled colleges score. And if you look at the top popular colleges, it's based on student interest. They don't even have to go there. And that's self-reported by the students. So again, digging down deep on these rankings, there's a lot of subjectivity on the rankings. All right, so here's where we fell as a district. And this gets a little confusing because you're going to see district rankings versus high school rankings. This one is a district ranking. And you can see what we believe is a clear positive trend line with the niche ranking, starting way back at 2017 to now. It's definitely a positive trend.
Just to point out, we flipped our graphs just because the lower the number, the better. So by putting it up the other way, the people might falsely look at it as the higher number.
Right, and just for some background, that's 46 of about 300 Massachusetts districts. And then swinging to the high school, this is niche for the high school. We're at 52nd. And then we have the surrounding districts and where we fell, and you can see we're clearly in the middle based on our proximity.
Moving on to Boston Magazine, which is something we compared as well. This is also current data for us. It's compiled with information of DESE, MCAS, and SAT scores. Now, there is some question in the future with the change to MCAS, whether they will continue to use that. Again, these methodologies change quite frequently, so they're not always the same comparisons from year to year. So it does look at the percentage of students that are in an arts course, percentage that are completing at least digital literacy or computer science, and then the 11th and 12th grade students that completed at least one advanced course. So you'll see our trend here in Boston Magazine from 2017 to now. We've been fairly consistent. We're currently at 41, slightly improved from last year. Our dip of 55 was in 21-22 during COVID, and we haven't really dug into or specifically figured out, because the methodology changes a little bit, why that particular year. But overall, it's a fairly consistent trend here with Boston Magazine. So these are, again, the comp districts that we showed you earlier. If you look at the dotted line with the H's on it, that is our information, so from 33 to 41, and how we compare to those neighboring districts. And if you look that, we actually did rank higher on this one than Ashland, Medway, Millis, Franklin, and Milford in the past 2 years, so that's positive. I would like to show you, if someone looking to get it, I would like to show you just quickly, because again, talking about how the data, oh, you have to do it, yes, could you do that? So we thought this was interesting when we looked at, currently Boston Latin in Boston is ranked 48 on Boston Magazine, so they're actually lower on that ranking. We're at 41. And if you can see, enrollment is not too much less than us, class size and so forth. They definitely have high MCAS, ELA, and math scores, but they're still 48 in ranking based on the different categories that the rankings do. And then if you go to the next one, here's their scorecard for U.S. News and World Report. So the same school that is 7 lower than us is number 1 in U.S. News and World Report. And again, look at that AP score. 99% took at least one AP exam. 99% of students. And then passing at least one AP, 94%. Now, if we go back, again, we want to go back to another slide to show ours. The AP scores and the AP exam significantly impact out the one on U.S. News. I didn't know if you wanted to go back to that. That significantly impacts rankings. So, this is something Mr. List will speak to as well, but with the changes in the schedule, it's going to allow us the opportunity to increase and expect students to take AP exams. Those numbers will go up significantly in the future, but that will still be 2 more years after that before you'll see them impact the rankings. So just don't be surprised that the rankings don't improve right away, for at least this one. So just remarking here with the U.S. News, we were 78 from 22-23, Niche 52, and Boston Magazine 41, and that was in the current from current data from last year.
All right, so we're going to take an overall district-wide view of MCAS, and then I think Ms. Mann and Mr. List are going to dive deep in their schools. So we're just going to give you an overall picture to inform those rankings you just saw. So we're going to do ELA, then math, and then science. All right, so this is one of the measures that's on our data dashboard, and we weigh very heavily, and that's the percent of students meeting or exceeding in ELA. And the district data, just a reminder, includes grades 3 through 10. So it's all 3 buildings that are taking MCAS. And so you can see where we fall on the left. The state is 43%, and that's that dotted line you're seeing down the middle there. And then on the right-hand side, you can see where we are at the top, the 60%. We creeped up a little bit in ELA from last year. And then you can see us versus our comp districts. For those that are new to this, and Susan had to explain this to me this afternoon, the Dover-Sherburne is a little bit confusing because they're combined for their secondary schools, but they're separated for their elementary schools, and that's why you're going to see Dover-Sherburne, and then Dover-Sherburne together.
Are the other districts also all schools, the 3 through 8 test and the high school test?
Correct.
Yeah, so this is just the district overview, and then you'll see the principals get into some of their specific data by school.
So that's ELA, percent meet or exceed. This is the one we showed in our last presentation in the spring where Holliston really was very high, and we feel like very far up there. So this is the average SGP, student growth percentile. And you can see the left is the bar graph, and then there is no, there is a state average, which is 50%, and we're at 55. And so again, if you look at the other comp districts, that's up there.
And moving on to math, again, meeting and exceeding. We're currently at 61%. Again, the same graphs. You see the dotted line. We're 20% above the state, and we're still looking at a very positive 5-year trend, starting at 55% and still strong in the 60s at this time in math. Similarly, for student growth, we did dip a little bit this year down to 56, but we started from 21 at 48. So again, a fairly strong student growth percentile, which is really important because the populations are different, but it measures the growth of the cohorts as they go as well.
And then finally, science. Science does not have a student growth percentile, so it's just this one slide, percent meets or exceeds. And you can see where we are, the same as last year, basically. There's a slight, if you look for 2021, there's a trend upward for sure, but again, the same as last year. And and you can see how we compare to the state as well as other districts.
So where do we go from here? You know, we shared some action steps that we've been working on the last couple of years, but you'll hear me talk more about this in the goals presentation. MTSS with the focus on Tier 1. We've done a ton of work in Tier 2 and Tier 3, but we really, as a district, as a leadership team, we really feel we need to focus more energy on Tier 1 and what can we do for all students. So our district, school, and individual goals are going to reflect the MTSS work that we're doing now and will be ongoing. We do really want to see more tutor positions, particularly at the middle school. We added 1 math tutor this year, but we'd like to be able to add more. And we know that there are budgetary constraints, but with the new changes that are coming with math, we really would like to be able to add particularly the math, I think, first. And then ESL staff has been a concern. We did increase our ESL staff, but we still struggle with that. You know, depending on where enrollment goes with that, that could change as well, but right now we would recommend that. We're doing a lot of PD this year. Executive skills training is one that's been started, and we'll be doing a full day of that in January, but also we'll be doing some work with that. The paraprofessionals had executive skills training already in the September PD. We really need to be collecting longitudinal program data. We did SAT, APs. We haven't had a system to do that. We really want to look into whether the dashboard could be used that way. So that's something I think Dan and the team's going to work on next and see if we can have that added somewhere. Because also seeing what are the outcomes for students for college, where are they going? We know Niche Data is looking at that, but we really as a district haven't calculated or kept track of that long-term data and how students succeed after. Because it's not even just college and where they go. Did they graduate in 4 years? Did they have a successful career after that? And there's a lot of data that could be gathered, but it's time-consuming and we haven't had a real opportunity to dig into that. Also using a lot of our Google resources and training to support MTSS. The data dashboard that we talked about and shared some of the data today, we're going to start rolling that out and hopefully get it to teachers as well so that they can look at the data. We don't want to overwhelm them because Dan and I went in the other day when we were doing this presentation and they've changed some of it, so it's just, it's a learning curve again. So we're going to slowly start rolling it out. Maybe it'll go to some of our, we talked about maybe department leaders, team leaders first, and eventually, and not even necessarily have an expectation that they have to do anything with it, but here it is for you to look at if you want to look at your own students and your own data. The AP exam is going to be huge, and I know David's going to speak to that in depth because, as I told you, we haven't really had the opportunity. The schedule has limited us, especially the ones that are half-year courses in the fall, and then the January comes, they change to new course. The test is until spring, so there really hasn't been, we can't force students to take it when the timeline has really harmed them, but with a full-year schedule now, we can actually look at that as something that they could offer in lieu of a final exam, and they would take the AP, so David will speak to that further. Again, that will ultimately increase our rankings overall. And I already mentioned the schedule. And David, I know you're going to talk. Do you want to talk a little bit about the PLTW and the dual enrollment offerings that you're looking into? I know you're going to talk a little bit later too, but you want to mention that?
Basically, when it comes to any of the rankings, there's a values piece there that you have to look at and what we care about. And one of the pieces are that we want students to be able to explore their passions and give opportunities that are not just here at the school, but recognized statewide and nationwide. And so by expanding dual enrollment opportunities, we're able to, there is a benefit to the rankings themselves, but also it gives students more opportunities to explore their interests. So whether it be Project Lead the Way, which is a nationally recognized STEM program, we have dual enrollment through UMass Dartmouth. We're piloting something with a few students through Arizona State, and so giving these opportunities for students. And ultimately, when you look at advanced coursework, the state, when looking at the state report card, that has a big impact there for the high school students. And by using programs like UMass Dartmouth and Arizona State, what it does is offers some equity in those college credit opportunities. So it's not just about students who take AP, but so the state in their on their report card weights dual enrollment type courses just as highly as some of the AP. So basically, you could look at that score and say, how are we serving our students who may not want to take AP classes, but do have interests and want to gain college credits. So this will give them access to that as well.
Yeah, and we've also talked in the past about how the schedule has limitations with DSB being the kind of the catch-all for everything and doing interventions for students, and students would choose not to do intervention block if they would rather go to a leadership activity. So again, this new schedule is really going to open opportunities to really dig into interventions at the high school. We've really been pretty successful K-8 implementing our Tier 2 and Tier 3. We've struggled more at the high school with our limitations, so that's going to be an opportunity next year. MCAS will be interesting to see where that goes because the state has already pointed out, and we've seen a dip in MCAS scores as a result of it not being a requirement. You'll hear us talk about the competency determination that the state wants us to now do a policy on, so we'll be having policy on that next year, but it remains to be seen what will happen with MCAS over the upcoming years. But either way, we still need to teach the standards, and we still need to be assessing our students, and we need to help ensure that they are getting the standards that they deserve to get. And then, do you want to talk about the PSAT as well?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll talk a little bit about this in my presentation as well. There's got to be a recognition that schools now are starting to look at SAT scores again and ACT scores again. I don't know if you've seen it in the news, but the current federal administration is making it's a condition of receiving federal dollars for some schools to start ensuring that they use the SAT and ACT as admission standards. With the fall-off of that over the past 5 years, students have not as many students are taking it. Not as many students are thinking about it. So this year we implemented something where it's all students taking the PSATs just so they at least see it. And that way, we could start bringing that back, not whether we agree with it or not, but if schools are going to start asking for it, I want to make sure that our 10th and our 11th graders all at least have an opportunity to take the exam to then see it. And it's something we have to look at as a school is, I know it used to exist here, it hasn't in a while, but how we support SAT test taking for students, because not everybody has access to SAT tutors and SAT classes. So I know that wasn't something that existed here prior to, I think, COVID, but something we do need to look at again, because that is something, again, whether we like it or not, it's coming back.
Yes, so thank you. We went very fast because we know there's a lot on the agenda, but certainly feel free to ask questions at this time.
As far as the PSATs go, it's a different test than the SATs,
yes,
right? In fact, I kind of feel like it's a little bit predatory because we go years without having a national merit finalist or a national semi-finalist, and yet we're asking families to pay for this test and take it, and it isn't, in fact, the SATs. So I like the idea that you might consider bringing back the SATs, I think from an equitable lens, instead of having to get your kid to Dover Sherburne or Natick or Milford, other schools that surround us that offer it. But more than that, we outfit each child with a Chromebook. There are free programs that tie to College Board, but oftentimes kids don't know about those. So I personally feel that more important than having kids take the PSATs, it's helping them with the skills to prepare themselves for the SATs and then making sure the timeline of it, right, and maybe bringing it here. So I'm happy to hear that you're considering that again.
And so that's the whole piece of it, right? So it's about, there's a lot of it strategy-based and test-taking and how to answer questions, how to read questions,
right.
And how to understand what they're asking for in questions. That's a lot of what taking any of these standardized tests are. We have started to look at that as a school in general, in terms of both for, I'm starting with, 9th, 10th grade for MCAS, and then as well moving up to, 11th, 12th grade for SATs. And when I say rent PSATs, I know, they're different tests, and I think it's just the idea, the concept for right now. And then if we can get the SATs back, that would be something that's really helpful to our families, because I do know that it's I know there were families who, I think, went to the Cape last year to try to take the, trying to take the exam. So, and it's becoming more and more difficult to find locations. So it's something that we want to be able to offer our students.
Yeah. In terms of, what do you mean by collect and analyze longitudinal program data, regarding SATs and ACTs? Because I feel like we have a lot of that. I mean, I think our teachers do end up getting that data on 3s and 4s and 5s. We see that with DESE. But beyond that, our school publishes, because they have to provide it to colleges, the school profile, which tells us what our average math and our average English, SATR, ACT, like we have that data to look back over the last 10 or 15 years. So what did you mean by that other than what we already have?
So it's a breakdown of who's taking those tests.
Okay.
And how their achievement is on those tests. So we have the data as a whole. What we don't have, and again, because it's selective to students, it's student populations and how are they faring on these tests. What I'll talk about in my presentation is if you, and it's out there in the open, it's all data that's available. If you look at our achievement level across the board for students without disabilities, it rivals what you see for the Boston Latin scores. And if you look at our achievement and our scores when it comes to students with disabilities, it's not great. And that's across the board. We look at SATs, but we haven't really had a chance to break down all of those pieces for AP, SAT across the board. So that's where it is. So yeah, we have access to the general scores. But there hasn't been the data looked at in students and access to make sure students have access to those courses and to taking those tests.
And how it lines up to how they fare in college and beyond, and triangulating all of those things.
I have a question. So I noticed a lot of these actions are focused on Tier 1, and I wondered, as you looked at your data, if there were any student groups that kind of rose to the surface, like our multilingual learner students with disabilities, any groups that you feel need to be prioritized who might have widening or persistent gaps?
Yes, we see our multilingual learners and our students with disabilities at all levels is an area of concern. And I think that's really why we want to focus on Tier 1. What can we be doing for all students, hopefully in the long term, to help teachers before they get on IEPs, maybe decreasing the number of IEPs and 504 needs if we're giving them the right things in Tier 1. So yes, we're still working extensively on Tier 2 and Tier 3, but we have a lot of systems in place for that. And when Joni comes back with the curriculum specialist and interventionist, they'll share a lot of the data on that as well.
I also wanted to add, we're going to be starting in November a multi-language learner curriculum review.
Yes.
So that will be looking at your Tier 1 instruction for them.
Are they currently receiving a different curriculum?
They're receiving supplemental, and it varies based on age. We are piloting Imagine Learning right now for them.
Can I just ask you, so for the people that are listening to this, we often say Tier 1 and Tier 2, and when you don't define it for them,
Sure.
they get a little lost. So could you just define that for those
Yes, so
people who...
Tier 1 is the instruction that happens in the classroom with the regular general education teacher. They could also have a co-teacher in there, but it's happening in the general ed. Tier 2 is when students need something more. They may not be on an IEP. They might just need it could be a short-term or long-term intervention, and then it's progress monitoring, usually any 6 to 8 weeks. So sometimes it's just a skill gap, and they can move out of the intervention very quickly in Tier 2. Tier 3 is even more extensive than that, and would be our students on IEPs that really need very extensive service with the co-teacher or with a pull-out model, all types of needs, if that helps.
And in terms of the recommended action step with the implementation of the new schedule allowing students to take AP exams in place of finals, is that something you've been discussing with AP teachers? And the reason I say that is, at least now, the way we're set up, I feel like teachers often use studying for the final as preparation for those AP exams, right? I mean, they'll sometimes have the final a week before the AP exams, so they know their kids are really strong in that material, and as a prod to get them to study. Is this a conversation we've had with teachers about that action step?
So for that, I would say that's very selective as to those teachers that do that action. Most of them are giving an exam, because some of them end in January, some of them end, in March. So the conversations with teachers is honestly been that, giving them the opportunity to design how they want, but that the exam is going to be required as a part of the, the reality is, why offer APs if we're not taking the AP exam? We might as well just offer our own courses then. Like you take the exam as it's connected to it.
So that's what happened. What happens in most districts along the way is that they prepare for the exams, they take the exams, and then I don't know if you like it's kind of like our AP Chem class here. It's like a Chem Apps. So they take a chemistry class where they then still dive deeper into it, do project-based work for the rest of the year. So it's been shared with the staff that that's going to happen, and how it's implemented within each AP class. We still have to talk about, but it's been shared that the AP will be something that's going to be, if students are taking the AP exam, that they're required to take the AP test with it.
And there will be a way to help kids who can't pay.
Yes, there is.
$100,
Yeah, there is.
or in this case, pay $400 or $500.
So yeah, the AP has waivers. Yes, there are ways to support that.
So I know we've heard a lot of these actions in the conversations last year, and I think that's a positive. We want continuity year to year. But I wondered if you could talk a little bit about, now that you've unpacked the MCAS data, you also have your beginning of the year diagnostic data from students. When you're looking at like Tier 1 instruction, deepening that looking at how teachers are using data or some of these other action steps, how is the data that you've been looking at informing that? Like, where are we going deeper or doing something where are we adjusting what we were doing from last year to meet the needs that we're seeing this year?
Yeah, I would say, and Johnny can speak to this as well, I feel like for the most part, the data that we've been really digging into has been to inform our students with interventions in Tier 2 and Tier 3, and that's why, we did see a shift. I've talked about this in the past. In 2017, kind of shifted away from really digging into MCAS data at all for some time, and then we did see the trends downwards in our rankings as a result of that. So we really need to get back into having people explicitly look at their own data. But I feel like for this year, because we had a late start with the dashboard coming out, so we had to slow down a little bit. But I think the Tier 2 and Tier 3 is where we're really using the explicit data in MCAS and all of the different sources.
The principals are also looking at their SST or SSA meetings as a precursor to what do we need to do? Do we need to do Tier 2 interventions in the classroom? And what the plan is there. So that's being used, and very rigorous data conversations are happening at leadership meetings at the schools.
And they are actually at staff meetings as well. Karen and David can speak to that as well, but they were at staff meetings. They're bringing in some of this data and using, instead of a traditional staff meeting, sometimes they're actually doing a data dive for all teachers at that time too. So we're really ramping up how people look at data. We're actually talking right now about the leadership team becoming data-wise informed and then using that as a train-the-trainer model, because it would really be an investment in the capacity of our team. So you'll hear us bring more of that back, and I really think that's the difference, that the shift that we have to make, really being intentional about how we're using the data moving forward.
They're also having conversations about iReady and iExcel and what specific plans should be made for students within the general ed classrooms. So having those conversations based on that data.
In the SAP process, looking at our students before they get on an IEP, before, really what can we do first in the general classroom, and being really specific about that. So I feel like, and I think Karen can speak to that as well, how they're actually using the data within those meetings for Tier 1 and trying to keep the child from having to go into a more restrictive environment.
So Don mentioned one of the 25, 26 action steps is to collect, analyze longitudinal program data and student college and career outcomes. However, that was one of the original ones 2 years ago in 2023, which was collect, analyze longitudinal programmatic data and student college career outcomes, SAT, APs, etc. And I believe, though my memory sometimes fails me, that one of the things I had asked for was to see some sort of, what we're looking at here is great to see that information, but it's like a first derivative, right? We're just kind of looking at the information on a high-level basis across all the students. What we're not doing yet, and what I really was hoping we would be doing by this point after having collected a few years worth of data, is starting to tie these things together at the student level and then creating reports that can be shared with the school committee. Hopefully, maybe you're using this more in already. It sounds like there may be some of it being done, but I would really like to see reports that you can give to the school committee to demonstrate how are we tying this together, how are we using it to inform what is happening in the classroom. What are we, for instance, if you have a student who gets an A in an AP class and then a 2 on the exam, are we looking at what may be driving that. And I'm not, and just to be clear to everyone watching at home, I am not looking at this in any way to try to target specific teachers or any kind of, anything like that. I really am more looking at it to inform how we can improve and how we can use this data, because the data dashboard and all this stuff, I mean, you can go onto the DESE website and pull a lot of this information off and just put together these charts, and then that's free and doesn't really, it's great, it's information, but where it really gets to be valuable is when you start to look at the student level, tie them together, then create reports about how that is happening at an individual basis and then at a collective basis, and really, and I was really hoping that by this point we would be there. Other things. How have students performed on standardized tests before and after they went on an IP or a 504? Are they working for these, not just these students, but at a holistic basis? Is there a way that the school committee can get access to some version of the portal that is not at all individual based, but for high level data? I'm sure that's probably a technological nightmare and probably not how it's built to be done. So the answer might be no, and that's fine. To be clear, I do not want student-level information, but I would love to be able to get in there and play around with the high-level information, though. Let's see. Again, as we're talking about SAT, PSATs, how are those scores versus MCAT scores versus the grades you're seeing in the classroom, AP outcomes, other types of data that we have? I mean, we have pretty high graduation rate, but are there indicators of things early on that may lead to questions of whether that child graduates or not? And some of it may not even be that you're actually sharing with us what the data that you see is, but it would be great to say, hey, this is what we're looking at, this is what we've done, so that at least we can sort of be, understanding how you're using all of this. But I still also want some of the data.
I think you'll hear them talk about some of that in their presentations as well tonight.
Okay.
So
I need a chance to look at that presentation, so, but it's, so maybe I'm jumping the shark here, but am I going to be so happy? All right, wonderful. Then I just went on a 5-minute rant for nothing. But those are the best rants.
I just had one question. It says here, increased teacher access to data for sport tier 1. What are the challenges to getting teachers access?
It's really not about getting them access. We can do that.
Yep.
It's about also not wanting to overwhelm them with one other thing, not putting pressure on them, because there's a lot on their plates. So we've been trying to be strategic about when.
Okay.
So last year was really about, let's really get more comfortable with it and familiar with it. So the leadership team, and then curriculum specialist and interventionist, and anyone else last year? Tutors. So they're putting all their interventions in there. And then this year, now that of course they've made a lot of changes this year, good changes, so we had to get more familiar, and we're doing some additional training with that. But then we're planning on rolling it out next, kind of gradually release with department leaders, team leaders, and grade leaders, and let them get comfortable with it. And then potentially, we haven't picked an actual date, but saying to everybody, here it is, and without putting expectations on how they'll use it, but just there'll be some people that'll be early adopters and jump right in, and sometimes that's the best way. People start getting, oh, did you see what happened with this group of that, and they get excited about it, but often that builds the momentum. We just didn't want people to feel pressured to dig into something, one more thing with the new math program and everything else, so we try to be strategic about it.
And if I could, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the administrators are, we had a meeting yesterday, it just feels like they're finally comfortable with the dashboard and what it can do, and you're going to hear about that in the presentation. So and we're developing protocols at the district level. So I think we are just becoming more comfortable, and so to roll it out to teachers prematurely would have been tricky. Yeah. Sorry.
No, I was going to go on to something else, so thank you. I was wondering, so I know they have other dashboards. They have their DIBELS, they have their iReady and iExcel, which have their own data kind of organizational dashboard. Do teachers have opportunities right now to dive into that data and then do some instructional planning based on that data?
Yeah, they have iReady and iExcel. They can already look right at that. Teachers in the lower levels, they get their DIBELS data and all of that. They can look at all those groups. So they do have access to a lot of the data. It's just not all, it's all put together in the same way as the dashboard, yeah.
Is there a Tier 1 curriculum that you're using? You just said that there was an expectation that teachers would be using these in the classroom, but is that the intent moving forward, that there will be a point where all first graders will get the same level of Tier 1 support, once a month or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes down with the curriculum review process, and then we have purchased curriculum materials district-wide for math, which Joni can speak to more. So yes, there is an expectation already with that they're supposed to be giving consistent expectations to all students in Tier 1. And I think that's where we did see the gap with our multilingual learners, for example, that we didn't have a consistent expectation. So that is something that we want to move towards, and I'd say that's true for all of our subjects.
The problem is that just the time, the cost, and implementation, the bandwidth of the teachers to implement something new. You can't do it all at once, even though it would be lovely to.
Yeah, and I will say, just Karen and I were visiting classrooms the other day, so we don't want our teachers to feel like everything has to be identical, right? We want to have fair and equitable opportunities for students, but everybody should have their own way of teaching and their own flair to it. However, at the same time, we do see a lot of our teachers now co-planning on, in general ed, and we did see some of the same lesson in different classrooms. Again, it was implemented differently, but kids were getting exposed to the same content. So we're seeing that more and more because it's helpful to the teachers to be able to plan together. It saves them, and then someone can be stronger in one area. And so I think that's really what we want to encourage. We're not looking for people to be robots and be identical. Put your own flair on things, put your own identity on things, but there are some common things we want to be doing so that kids do get the same exposure to things.
I had an additional question on the U.S. News, and I understand that it's 2 years ago as opposed to a look back 1 year. As far as I can tell, it looks like about 50% of it is based on our MCAS data, right? It's proficiency 20%, assessment student state assessment performance 20%, underserved student performance 10%, but that's based again on state assessment. So 50% state assessment. And then the other, I think it's the other 40%, again, tied back to the AP exams and 10% to a graduation. I'm just concerned of the 8 schools, 6 of them went up, and we were one of the 2 that went down. Do we know what drove that? Of those percentages, whether it was our MCAS or whether this was APs, like what?
If you look at that, if you look at it there
for the schools, when you compare it to other schools, that year it's our MCAS scores.
Okay.
If you look, you'll hear about it in my presentation, but we're in ELA, we just hit pre-COVID numbers for meeting and exceeding. For ELA and math, we're almost there as well for this past year. So that number, and then it's any given year in this school based on AP is just a crapshoot. The consistency isn't there in terms of those percentages of students taking the exam or not. So it's hard for us to look at our data and have any consistency in that data because it's really based on how students feel when the test falls. Next year, our test numbers aren't great because one of our largest exams, which is psychology, the amount of kids take it, psychology, fell on the day of prom. Then there was an issue with the exam itself, so they had to move it to another day. So instead of it being 50% of kids taking it, I think 20% of kids took the AP Psych exam. So I can already tell you that the data 2 years from now for U.S. News, should they be using the same, we're going to have a large contingent of kids who didn't take that AP exam, and that's an AP exam that a lot of kids take. So when things like that come up, so it's hard for us to look at that data and compare it to other schools, but when you just look at it year over year, the proficiency there in each of those is what drives us down a lot.
So it would have been MCAS as compared to
MCAS,
that cohort of Hopkinton, Diaz.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. And I think there are definitely some schools that do teach to the test, right? We've always, since I've been here and before, the talk was always about really priding ourselves and not trying to teach to a test, right? I don't think that's what we're looking for. At the same token, I do think there are some skills that students can learn and strategies around test taking in general that you're not teaching towards MCAS. They're learning the standards, and then how do you apply those standards? And we can embed that in their testing, and that's part of the Tier 1 support we want to give teachers as well for their regular tests.
I did take a sneak peek ahead, and so I'm going to eat some crow later, but that's fine.
It's like I knew what you wanted to hear, huh?
I mean, I've asked for it before, but
I know,
it's good, yeah. It's good. I like to, it's good to be humble once in a while. It's rare.
Any other questions on the data? Should we move on to the district and school goals? I think so.
Do you have it up already? Do you want to? Do you mind? The one in the, you have the Google one, right? Yes. No, that's the PDF version. I have some links, so I need the other one. Hang on, I'll grab it. No, you had it earlier. No. Right below that, I see 25, 26. Oh, you just had it.
I just had it?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to close out for a minute and then find it? Hang on. Why don't you close it and I'll grab it if I can.
I got it.
I got it. That's about it. Hang on.
You go to the Google Slides? Actually, I have it from you're right.
Yeah.
I have it. You were looking at it earlier. Okay.
Thank you. All right, so again, we tried, knowing we had the data presentation as well, we provided our secondary principals here today. Thank you, Karen and David, for being here tonight. We did do, again, a short presentation. We're trying to be mindful of that, but so I think it'd be helpful if you could wait till questions at the end, because something might be answered, and if you could write them down, that hopefully we can expedite things for you as well. So I just always put in our mission, vision, and strategic objectives, because all the work that we've been doing since 2022 has been tied to our 4 arches, and you'll hear that common thread throughout our presentation tonight as well. At the blue link there, you'll see the detail that with our 4 arches and our 4 strategic objectives, the action steps for this year in all of those. We're not going to talk about all of that tonight. We just picked out some highlights, but that's there for you to look at as well, tied to this presentation in your folder. All right, so Arch 1, as you know, is communication practices, and our strategic objective there is to ensure consistent, effective communication between and among administration, schools, staff, parents, and the community to address student achievement, opportunities, and areas for improvement. So some of the key highlights in this area that we're going to focus on, you'll see the common theme about MTSS and a big focus for us as a district throughout our through lines tonight's presentation. So if you could go to the next one. So some of the work that we're doing, we are continuing our work on Stage 2 UBD, because that's where we really dig into some of this work, and Joni and her team will present on that, I believe, in November. We are continuing our work on developing common language vertically and making sure that schools are having some consistency with that, so that as students transition on, they're not hearing different wording and different expectations. So working on teaching and learning vertically. We're also looking to ensure that our DESE notification systems and getting information to new families is robust. We did have a central resource center that we put together, and we're continuing to make sure we have access for students, students that are multilingual learners, students with different needs, so that's something that we continue to enhance. We are definitely making sure that our multilingual learners and our Title I families are getting access to things on the web page and some resources that are specific for them as well. I think that we've done a lot of work on the website, and Dan can speak to that further, but really just making sure that our materials are accessible. We try as much as possible not to do PDFs because they can't change the language, and that's been really helpful with all the work that we've done to enhance our website. Cybersecurity has been a huge increased need, and we continue to ramp up. I'm going to be doing some more cybersecurity training. This week alone, we had a significant incident, which I won't share specifically, but again, when people aren't aware of some of the cybersecurity and the spam that gets in, and unfortunately that can really impact our infrastructure quite a bit. So Dan is vigilant with that, but even with that, our staff still needs some updated training, and we've had a lot of new staff as well. Art 2, social emotional well-being, working to provide a safe and supportive learning and social environment where each member of the educational community can flourish in a respectful, inclusive, and productive environment. Again, you'll see that we're looking for our MTSS teams to embed district protocols. One of the things that we've done is we do have MTSS teams at each building looking at data and so forth, but what we haven't done is come up with a systematic way as a district and trying to have some specific continuity with that. So this year we're really ramping up. Our leadership team is creating a district-wide team and see how we can transition that horizontally and vertically and have some consistency with how we're using data. We have done a ton of work with our family education workshops, attendance, anxiety, wellness. We really collaborate with HYFS and HDAC, and we've shared before, and I know Jariel shared a lot about Care Solace and Cartwheel in the past as well. We're doing a ton of work, and Jariel talked about as well with our SSP educators, our student support personnel, and how we can help support them with social emotional learning, and a ton of coaching and structures that we're working with our leaders. We have students working with Jariel right now to help with MTSS planning and needs for students as well. Under teaching and learning, and having robust professional learning communities and encourage a positive, supportive, and collaborative learning environment of instructional creativity that includes rigorous and aligned content. So again, we talked already about the data dashboard, but really looking at that as a robust tool, using it even more deeply this year, continuing to enhance the offerings to teachers, and developing action steps around improvement based on the data, as you were asking about earlier. And the work that Joni's doing with her curriculum team is really looking at all the curriculum groups. She mentioned earlier about the multilingual learners and making sure they have access to robust materials. That's something that had been lacking and inconsistent, so we're really identifying those in all areas. I mentioned the database team that we're forming with our leadership team, and you'll hear more about that later in the year, but we're starting to put together that work now. And then the PD team has really done a ton of work about trying to embed MTSS into all the offerings that we're doing this year. So you're going to hear more about that in our November PD as well. And I feel like each school has really done a ton of work, principals, curriculum specialists, interventionists, other team members, to really focus on robust opportunities to enhance our Tier 1 instruction. And then finally, our talent and resources. I won't read all of that, but you know that that's been an area working to attract and retain staff has continued to be something we strive to improve on. Location here has been a challenge for getting people, even more recently. We've had openings later in the year. We don't get the applicants we'd like to see. Many years ago, you'd see hundreds of applicants for elementary positions, and we're not seeing that in this day and age. But we have retained more staff, and again, we'll do that year after year. We do show you the retention numbers, but I feel like this summer we did not have the amount of hiring that we have in the past, so that looks like a good sign for the future as well. So we do want to work on continuing to increase and enhance our hiring, mentoring, and retention practices, and particularly with our staff of color and supporting all our different cohorts of staff. I also think looking at our capital plan more robustly and making sure that the district curriculum review process is able to be funded through capital is an ongoing need of ours. We continue to work with the town manager very closely to see that we have a multi-year plan for capital. And then the evaluation process is another area where we continue to try to build our capacity as a leadership team so that we can support teachers and, again, look for things to help in Tier 1 in the classroom with all staff. On. So this is a leadership goal that we're working on as a team, and each leader in the district is going to do some form of this. It might vary by what their need in their particular building is, but I'll just read to you what we're focusing on. So for the 25-26 school year, the district leadership team at Holliston Public Schools will focus efforts on strengthening our multi-tiered system of supports by establishing and documenting a clear, sustainable, and data-driven process for collaborative problem solving. This includes training all leadership team members on data tracking and analysis protocol, establishing a regular schedule for team meetings, and developing a comprehensive district school-wide MTSS framework. So Tier 1 instruction will be the primary focus this year, as I shared earlier, and really each school does have an MTSS framework, but we also want to develop some consistency pre-K to 12. So the accountability data, this is straight from DESE this year. When Rob Curtin shared our data just a couple weeks ago, I think Joni and I were on a meeting with you. And, you know, as a state, with the changes in MCAS, they've seen some decline overall with the data. But I wanted to point out where we are as a district. So 66% progress for our accountability ratings, which means substantial progress toward targets. High school was also 60 cents and substantial progress. Adams at 77, so 75 and above is meeting or exceeding targets, so that's really strong there. And then Miller at 70% was also substantial progress toward targets. So that's, you know, just, they look at multiple different data sources. If you want to learn more about it, there's a whole chart. It shows how they weight different things for the accountability data. Moving on to the high school. And he also has a link there to his multiple action steps.
Yeah, so the link in this page here is for the entire document of goals for the year. I'm not going to go through reading all of these, but just to give you an idea of where our focus is within each of these is really looking at consistency, collaboration, and clarity, consistency in our communication practices, our practices within the schools and supporting students, and our teaching and learning, whether that be Tier 1, whether that be curriculum as a whole, collaboration in terms of building teachers' capacity with Tier 1 supports, building collaboration between counselors, administration, teachers, students and families, and supporting students, and then again, in clarity in what it means to be successful here at Holliston High School and through our vision of a graduate. So that's really sort of like the themes that bring us through all of our goals this year. And when we look at it as on a whole, we see that, you know, attendance is up, our achievement gaps are narrowing, and that we are working hard to engage more and more students in advanced coursework across the board. But what you'll see throughout this presentation is that we're trending up, which is really great to see from sort of the pandemic until now. It came out really small there on that writing, I apologize. But again, when we start to look at our data and cross-referencing different data points and digging deep, what I wanted to do with each of these is show sort of the overall, but each of those little dots are individual students. And each of those little individual dots give us more and more information about those students and where they fall within different aspects of their time here at Holliston High School. We focused a lot on attendance last year, and that is working. We went from about 16% of chronic absenteeism to we're only at about 8% this year. I know that chart again is small, but we are focusing so much on it that we see fewer and fewer students who are absent, and we are seeing more students. We're identifying more students who are at risk and starting to intervene earlier. I can, say that we're meeting once a week as an admin team to talk about attendance and really focusing in on not just students who are chronically absent, but those who sort of fall between the cracks, like who aren't chronically absent, but are absent a little more than we would like to be. Because to be honest, at this point in the school year,
when you see chronic absenteeism, we know who those students are, we know why they're absent, but there's those middle ground students who maybe miss like 5 days, 6 days, that we're trying to understand what's going on. And so starting to build in interventions there for those students and trying to partner with families. So that's a lot of the work there. I apologize. So what we also see, and again, this will be no surprise to anybody, and I used MCAS as an example there. When you look at attendance and you tie that to MCAS, you can see that there is a direct correlation there with students, and so early identification. And as you go through and look at this across the board, you see attendance and GPA, you see attendance and AP scores, you see it across the board. So we know that students who are here are more successful, and so that's where it starts. That's sort of the baseline for us, is we need to do a lot of work on attendance, and in order to then build everything up from there, because we can't help students if they're not here. So that's step one for us. We do see more and more students arriving on time. Our tardies are down. And I will say that it's been a delay this year because parents are being very responsive to us, even for like, some are annoyed that they're getting DSB emails when their kids aren't showing up for DSB. So, but no, that's been really helpful in terms of supporting our students and allowing us to build supports in. Again, here, what you're going to look at, again, this is just a taste of what we're able to do, and then sort of sharing what we do with the information. So what we see, again, is that what I just tried to show is that we are seeing growth again. We look at AP scores, but we also look at SAT and GPA, and again, you can break that down by students, high-need students, and you start to see that those who, we have about 17% of students who have an IEP, another 14% on 504s, so about a third of our population, and so understanding how those students are achieving. And again, when you look at each of those little dots, it allows us to do that, but what we want to actually see is how we can support them within their classes to build their achievement in these areas. So that's our work now. When Susan talks about those tier 1 supports, again, and like Dawn, you talked about, how do you answer those questions? How do you take this as? How do you build that into the actual classroom that's happening? Because that isn't really something that's been done here in many years, really bringing those pieces into the classroom. Because it was talked about before, if we don't bring all of those supports into the classroom and train our teachers on it, we can't have tier 2 and tier 3 supports for every student in the building. It's impossible. So we really have to give our teachers the skills. So a lot of our PD is focused on how do you build that capacity in teachers in the classroom and build that within our curriculum itself this year. When you look at, and I know in terms of like the PSAT and SAT, but what you do is you see the students, and you can't see it here, but the students who've taken the PSAT twice, 10th and 11th grade, their SAT scores are higher than those who took it once and then those who didn't take it at all. Now, I don't know how many of them had SAT tutors, I don't know the classes, but just just sort of the data that's in front of us shows that there's something, again, is it correlation, is it cause? I don't have a deep answer to that, but it's something that we need to dive deeper into. But again, building that into our classroom capacity is where really our focus is this year across the board. The AP growth you see there, I thought that was just like, as I was digging into some data, there was like a random chart I came across, but you can see there's a tremendous growth in the amount of students that are actually scoring 4 or 5s on the exams. But it's not like we have a lot less kids taking the exams overall. We still have the same amount of kids taking the exams, so that's happening as well. So we do see success within the AP exams, and now our goal is to have more kids take the AP classes and the advanced classes and even some of those dual enrollment classes. So working with our counselors to do that, and our counselors are working to, again, bring clarity to parents about this whole process of SATs, PSATs, APs, college visits, and all of that. So I was in a meeting this morning, we were talking about it. So.
This is, as you look at this, so just to give you an idea over time of where we are and what's happening at the high school, our achievement gap is shrinking. If you look at the chart here, we're starting to get back to sort of that first group right around our pre-pandemic numbers. And that's really exciting. As you can see across the board also, like there's an outlier year in our MCAS, but overall what we're looking at is how do we grow that sort of meeting to become more of those who are exceeding and those who are partially meeting to those who are now meeting expectation. So we are building that out. This past year, it was nearly 80% in both areas. With that, this year, we're instituting a program where our NHS students can earn hours and also tutor fellow students during DSP. So building that out, working with peers, our interventionists are working with small groups of students in specific content areas based on IXL, based on grades. And this is some of, Dan, what you were talking about, sort of all that cross-referencing of work. So now with this, the way the data dashboard is built, we're actually able to look at MCAS, IXL grades all together to then pull out students based on those needs specifically. And so that's been really exciting this year. And we do know that the more the students are getting those interventions through IXL and through our interventionists, the better their achievement is when you look at a standardized thing like MCAS. For the high school, we don't have things like DIBELS, we don't have all, so it becomes very difficult to look at this over time. And so we do rely in some ways on things like PLTs, on MCAS. But if you look at it over time, there is a reality. I was sitting with a math teacher today looking at his class and some of their scores. We were talking about what students picked up. Like, did you cover this? Yes. So why didn't students pick this up? Looking at like one of his CP2 classes. So this data is really helping us look across the board at students both individually but also in groups and understanding their supports. As we look into, and I'll talk about it in my last slide, which is the schedule, looking at how we build those supports in for the 26-27 school year, because a lot of the work we're doing now is in preparation for that changeover for 26-27. So. And this will show you, again, when we look at our data, there are different points. If you look at our MCAS, it tells one story. If you look at our grades, it tells another, but this stood out to me, and I thought it was important to share. When you look at our students without a disability, you have 89% of their grades are A's and B's. almost 96% of them passed all their courses. When you look at a student with a disability, you see that it's 67% of their grades are A's and B's, and 83.5% are passing all of our courses. So when we look at across the board, our MCAS, our APs, all of that, we have a lot of work to do in that area for those students there. And that's really, honestly, what we should be looking at as a school across the board, and how we support those students who most need us. And how we can support them through, and again, as we said, those tier 1 supports. So what our teachers are working on this year is building in those tier 1 supports into their curricular work for 26-27, so that there can be some consistency in the experience and in those supports that students are receiving. And so that's going to be a lot of our work over the next 2 years. But again, this is where, as we work as a staff, looking at that piece. Now, what is great is when you see that even though the grades are there, you look at our advanced coursework, we have 85% of seniors who are taking an AP or honors course this year, which is really cool to see. And that's up over previous years. So getting an opportunity for our students to take challenging courses, finding ways for them to engage in things they are passionate about. We have 180 out of 207 seniors either taking part in internships or senior projects. Again, we're working on tons of dual enrollment opportunities for them, pathways, PLTW, from our global citizens to our business pathway. We were just approved to do planning for an information systems pathway. We received, I think this year we're getting grants totaling, I think, somewhere around $120,000 to start building out those programs for students to give them access. And so but this really, this piece right here really stood out about where we have some huge need is within our classroom supporting these students across the board, and that's where a lot of our PD lies this year. The last slide there is sort of what allows us to drive a lot of this work. We had our NEASC, we have our NEASC Decennial, our final visit for the 10-year visit will be in March when they look at our work towards their recommendations. A lot of what, Dan, you talked about before, all of that is what informed, like looking at this sort of across different students and through how does a student do after they put on an IEP and they have a 504 in their classes, and how does that connect to MCAS and IXL and PSATs and APs. All of that work is ongoing now because we have to build out within a new schedule where they're going to find supports. And then we also, again, need to prepare our teachers. So what we're doing as a staff is we're aligning curriculum and assessments to the schedule, our scope and sequence. We're revising those. We're looking at different opportunities for students to be able to excel in areas that they are excited about, whether it be things like math or, and figuring out, making sure that they can get to the level that they want to get to, or whether it's business or engineering or civics or any of those pieces. Again, looking at as a whole, again, it's in the classroom with the most important people in the building to support the students, who are the teachers. So how do we give them the skills that they need for those Tier 1 instructions and building that out? And so by doing that with that collaboration of teachers over the next year and a half, I guess, or 2 years, towards working in the new schedule. And those pieces were really, if you look at the NEASC report, that was really the crux of it. It was looking at our schedule, looking at the equity report and equity for students, access to all of our advanced coursework, because the way our schedule is built now, it depending on what classes you took the previous year and what you might want to take, that limits your ability to choose separate classes. And so all that, and then expanding the access to college and career pathways for students to give them opportunities to sort of explore their passion. So that's sort of the crux of our work this year. Happy to answer all your questions.
Do you want questions now or the end of the full?
I think it makes sense to address.
Yeah. I think the question is now.
If that's
and then,
okay.
yeah.
And then, does Mr. Liss get to leave after this too? I'm not sure what.
No.
Yeah. I guess one thing I had a question about, and I know this is one thing that distinguishes Holliston and Hopkinton, as at Hopkinton, I know they have a number, like when we look at how many kids are taking AP tests and also scoring on it, they do allow their freshmen to take AP courses. Is that something, especially in light of the schedule change for next year, that we could explore, at least for some limited amount of AP classes? So it would increase the numbers and the attraction to stay here at the high school too.
So when you look at the AP courses for freshmen, I can tell you across the board, so for example, like our science department has shifted our science curriculum to allow for students now to take all 3 AP classes to sophomore, junior, and senior year. By actually it's emulating what Hopkinton does, is offering a bio one semester, chem the next semester for kids, so that students can then go on to take on. You could technically take AP Physics, AP Chem, AP Bio for the next 3 years, so you're not shoving them all into 1 year. So that sort of allows them to spread it out there. Most schools that have that are offering some of the AP courses around like AP Human Geography, AP Physics for Physics First schools. We're not doing Physics First because AP Physics 1 is an algebra-based physics, so that's an area to do it. We haven't explored that yet, but there are opportunities for us to do that. We just haven't looked at it yet because I think for us it's looking at how do we make sure that students can access the courses that we have with the new schedule, and then being able to look at what they would take within there, because again, our teachers are looking at their scope and sequence of their individual classes and the trajectory of students through the whole with what we have now and what we as Holliston want. But there, yeah, I mean, the schedule that we're building allows, really it's looking at 10th, 11th, and 12th grade for APs, but allows students to spread it out over the time. So it's less of we're going to take 5 APs our senior year. You can take like 2 or 3 a year and meet those same numbers. because a lot of schools that you see, freshmen and sophomores don't take any APs, and then you have kids taking like 4 and 5, 4 APs their junior year, 5 APs. So hopefully our students are able to spread that work out, take their APs, and then explore other ways for themselves and do internships and do courses that they want to try versus having to sort of shove all of their APs into 1 year or 2 years. But it is something that we would need to look at sort of as we make the shift.
First of all, I do want to just, I know your charts were really hard to see.
Yes, I didn't realize, yes.
I was going to ask, can we actually get the charts in full version? Yep.
But I do.
I put them up there, and I said,
But I just want to underline what you said, that the high school is trending upward when we look at your data. You are closing gaps, because when I look on the publicly available DESE data, it is really clear that gaps are significantly narrower this year, particularly in math and science, and some really great things going on with math growth for all student groups, not just when we look at all students, but looking at lowest performing students, students with disabilities, lots of different groups. So I wanted to underline that, but I also wanted to kind of follow up to Dan's question earlier. So when you talk through the data dashboard and how you're using it, I hear you have the components of an early warning indicator system. You're looking at attendance, behavior, assessment, and grades, and you're monitoring how students are doing across that. So you have all the components for looking at who are the kids that Tier 1 general instruction is not working well. So just to kind of follow up to Dan's question, like what happens then?
So that's what we have to build out, and that's what we're having difficulty doing in this schedule. Where we struggle is where to fit in any Tier 2 supports, which is why we're so heavily focused on Tier 1. And so right now, honestly, the only Tier 2 supports we have are sort of the curriculum interventionists during DSB. We have some NHS students who do like after-school support, but we don't have things that would be lovely to have, which we can start to do in a schedule that's sort of a generalized schedule where you can look at things like writing centers. You can look at things like that, whereas right now, where does that fit in, especially within we have a 4-day rotation. It's like when you have a 7-day rotation, you now have it sounds weird, but you now have 7 DSBs versus the 4. And so it's really something that we've been missing. We don't have those. I know my son just started his first year at Needham High School, and he already uses the writing center for his support during his, what they call it, theirs is X block. So during his X block. So there's those pieces there that we'll be able to start offering to students, because we don't, honestly, we don't have it. We now have the early, sort of these early warning indicators and sort of building that out, but now we haven't been able to build out what we do with that. And so that's why we're spending so much time looking at what's happening in the classroom right now. That's the honest, transparent, we just don't have it right now.
If I could just build on to that, it's a very dangerous question.
Go for it.
So we're going to identify students who need Tier 1 support. But then we need to have the resources to, even once we provide and know what we need to do to help them, we then need the resources. So are we looking at building out a plan, and obviously as we look at priority needs and all that, but probably a multi-year plan of, what does the ideal model look like, and then what is the incremental steps that we can try to take to fit budgetarily in to get there?
So the first part of the question, that Tier 1 support, so by building the capacity of teachers with Tier 1 supports, you again, like Susan said before, you then hopefully eliminate some of the need for some of those Tier 2 supports because they're getting it inside the classroom. Mm-hmm. So that's one piece of it there. And that hopefully when the Tier 1 supports are built into what's actually happening entirely throughout the classroom, those students then aren't identified for anything because they're successful to begin with. That's hope number one with the Tier 1. Then in terms of the Tier 2, that's the planning that I was just talking about before that we need to do. So when there's a need after that.
I'm sorry, okay, the acronym was so tier 2, I guess. Is it like the writing center need, is that considered tier 1 or tier 2?
That would be tier 2.
That would be tier, okay, so I'm
like,
talking about tier 2 then.
Right. So that's the piece that we need to build out, and I think Susan just talked about it, where we have those, whether it be like the tutoring supports, or whether it be writing centers, or whether it be like, I mean, it sounds like elementary, but like homework club, like those type of things. Those are the pieces that we need to plan to build out that transparently we don't have right now. So we're right now built over years, but we're now working on building the capacity of tier 1, and then then we have to build out those tier 2, and then tier 3 really looking at, that's more of like the special ed identification piece. But we know we need to build it out because the other piece is realistically, when you talk about having 31% of our students IEP 504, a lot of what those accommodations exist are tier 1 supports. Like those are pieces that are tier 1 supports that we should really have for all of our students.
And that's why we haven't asked for tutors at the high school, because of the limitations with the schedule. Would they do that work? And you'll hear Karen talk about, that's why we are asking more for tutors at the middle school, because we built opportunities within her schedule, and then the elementary schedules as well, with our tutors working under the interventionists. It's been a really robust model, and we want to try to replicate some of that.
And I would say the other piece is to not get lost in all of this is like that when we talk about tier 1 and tier 2 and all of the supports, it's not just for struggling, like it's not just for struggling students, right? It's a kid who is wanting to take more advanced coursework because they're really interested in something, and how do we make sure that they have the supports to be able to do that work? Because that's really what should be the cool part about high school, is that if you really want to try to take a more advanced science class, that you have the opportunity to do that, and that we have the supports for students to be able to do that. And so, when we talk about math and we talk about science and ELA and writing, like we need to build those supports for all students, so that they can be excited about challenging themselves and feel good about the fact that they're really interested in this, they're taking this, and they're going to be successful in it. So that's really where the work we have to do moving forward. It's that tier 1, then tier 2 after that. So
we need to build a plan and then figure out how we're going to implement it, which includes how we're going to fund it. Yeah. Okay, so a few more, if I might. One of the things I know we discussed when we went through the scheduling process, the change in the schedule process, was that moving from 8 to 7 classes, while it does sort of remove some choice, it increases the minutes per class significantly, by my estimate about 13%. Have we started thinking about what we're going to do with that additional time, and maybe it can be used partially as for some of the stuff that we're just talking about now?
So that's what we're doing, yeah.
Is that okay?
So that's what we're doing. That's what our year is about this year, and then like next year is about. So the first thing we have to do is look at sort of the scope and sequence. So when you have that extra time, and to be honest, more days, which is like, for example, like right now it's 90 days with at 81 minutes. We're going to have 130 days, 130.
5 sevens of 180. Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, but 5 sevens, 180, and you're only losing 17 minutes of class. So you're down to 64 minutes. There's still a really good amount of time in those classes. So our teachers have to build out from 90 days at 81 minutes to that 64. So there's a technical aspect to that with sort of scope and sequence, and looking at how that plays out throughout the year. So that's like what we're working on now. And then that's again what we were talking about, and that's what sort of Joni's been talking about in the what's the word I'm looking for, the stage, like that stage 2, right? Those pieces. That's where you're then building out all of those components that you're talking about. So but that first we have to build out that scope and sequence and let the teachers work together and determine what does that look like over the 130 class periods at 64 minutes each.
Right. So, okay. If we go to slide 11, one of the things I think that is really great, and you mentioned it, was looking at the achievement gap and how it's been closing quite significantly. What's been driving that?
Our teachers.
We have great teachers, but like, Was there a change in something, or, I mean?
It's pretty drastic.
It's access to information, right? And so like when we start to talk about what's going on in our classroom, we talk about where students need supports, teachers respond to that because they want their students to be successful. And so we've had lots of conversations about where students need growth. Again, the achievement gap's shrinking, but as you can see, the achievement gap's shrinking like in MCAS, but we also see within grades in the classroom, we still need to fix that gap as well. So we've done a lot of work sort of like that's the standards-based side of things, and then the grades, not quite, that's where there's a deep dive. Is that a homework achievement gap? Is that an assessment achievement gap? That's the area where we need to go. But what's driving it is our teachers and their recognition of the needs of students, because our students change, and they've changed over time. I mean, they've changed very quickly in the past 10 years and changed a lot. The demographics of the students have changed, and our teachers have responded to that.
I'm also going to add, you guys have been having rich conversations around stage 1 and stage 2, and that makes a difference because then you have consistency into what the teachers are teaching and what experiences the students have.
I have a question that's sort of about 11 and 12 there also with both of those slides talk about the achievement gap, talk only about special ed students. Are we also looking at our students of color, socioeconomic, disadvantages, MLL, to see where they fall in this? Because I'm just curious if these numbers are really reflect, especially on slide 12, where we say that we have a percentage of students who are not taking any advanced courses. What does that population look like, and what supports do we have in place to make sure that, especially I think math, number of students and friends that I have in the community who do math tutors or Russian math school, we shouldn't have to.
Right, absolutely.
And that's an equity piece as well.
So when we look at the advanced coursework specifically, our students with disabilities are still lagging behind when they take the advanced coursework. We don't have, sadly, our L population, our ML population drastically shrank over the past year to very, very, very few students. So statistically, that doesn't do anything here statistically. I mean, those students need supports, but it's not very many students. When we look at it really is for us in terms of, and then those who identify as students of color, we don't see necessarily a massive gap there. Low income we do. At the high needs population, sort of that's where we see it. And so it's sadly to say it's exactly where you'd expect to see for the populations that we have large enough numbers that are statistically relevant to measure here. It's that and that. So that's the work we have to do with. It's really students with disabilities is where the biggest gap is across the board.
If I could ask one more,
Yep.
On page 10, the SAT and GPA, this is the kind of stuff that I love to see. I like numbers. People, I know it's going to be shocking.
And I'll send this to you in bigger format so you can see what it actually says.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
I'd love the numbers too. But anyway,
I get you those.
some of the things, what I look at when I look at a chart like this is the outliers, right?
Yep.
And so how are we using sort of some of this so for instance, one that really sort of strikes me is because, obviously there's some students who are good students, can get good grades. Test taking is just not their thing, right? I mean, that's part of the big knock on standardized testing is just, it's almost a skill to just take the test and it doesn't necessarily really measure intelligence. But you have a student who scored 1,200 on the SATs, which is a solid score, but has a 2.5 GPA. Less than, well, slightly under 1,200 and less than a 2.5 GPA. Do we look at that and go and try to figure out what's going on with that student? You might know who it is, and I'm not, but just because it's clearly someone who, has if you look at is this the median or mean line?
That's the mean line.
Okay, so if you look at the mean line, someone scoring 1,200 on the SATs should be at like a 3.6. Mm-hmm. And they're under 2.5.
So if you hover over that dot's David List. except my GPA was 1.4.
Okay.
And I scored 1,300 on the SATs.
Okay.
So those are the students, so that's the engagement piece, right? So we need to understand, why is that student, A, not being challenged? Because are they bored? Is it a social emotional piece? So those are the students that we're able to look at and really understand what's going on. Again, when we start to look at our school counselors and what they do, and throughout this year, they've been sort of, again, streamlining their work to help identify students who sort of follows these outliers. So I was talking about before, it's like those same students who, like, when you're chronically absent, like, we know who you are, and we know what's going on. But that sort of middle ground student who's absent sometimes is kind of just floating along, that's where we need to identify a lot of it. I will also say that we do have lots of students, a lot of our students who are chronically absent with some social emotional disabilities. That has nothing to do with their capabilities on a standardized test. And so you will see outliers like that where they have a hospitalization, there's something like that. Like, we have a student who missed many, many days of school, and I think off the top of my head, who has straight A's when they turn anything in. Like, so their GPA is really high, but they're not at school all that often. And so because they're capable, they just have something that they're working through.
So we are using reports like this to identify students, who at least to check in and see what the situation is.
So that's what we're doing now. That's why I added these sort of different, so what I tried to do is to sort of add different components together so you could see how we're sort of looking at kids. We're using different measures that we haven't previously, because what it used to be is you'd look at their grades, how are they doing? Then you would look at the AP later, if they took an AP, you'd look at their attendance, you look at that. So what I was trying to show here is what you were talking about before, is like when you start to cross-reference some of these things that, like an SAT and GPA, which, like, does it actually matter? Ultimately, not necessarily, but you then can see outliers and you can start to see what's happening there and why, and start to ask those questions.
Well, it depends on what the students' sort of goals in life are too, like what their next steps are. And I mean, the other one that sort of popped out is the student who's got a 3.6, 3.7 GPA, but scored an 800 on the SAT. Are there, while standardized testing is certainly not necessarily a predictor of success in life, it is a skill that, depending on what you do, you may need for 5 or 6 more years at least. Are there things that we can offer to help that student raise that grade, so maybe that they can get into the college that they want, or at least the next phase in life?
So that's what I was talking about with, like, Dawn before, about offering things like, so before my time and before COVID, SAT prep, that was something that was available at Holliston High School for students. So it could be an equity piece. As you said, it could be a kid who's just not interested and their parents made him take it. It could be as simple as that. But again, those are the pieces where we have to look at how we support all students. And so if it is a test-taking thing, then how do we support that student? If it's that they don't actually care about the SAT and they need, so let's say we go talk to that kid, is it something else that they actually they're not interested in the college process, they want to go military, or they want to go into the workforce, how do we support that? And we have, like, that's where we're building out our programs, like we have more engineering classes, and we have our construction tech classes, so we have those pieces. So this allows us to, as we start to look at this data, this is what allows us to actually support those students who may not have been noticed before, because honestly, like, they had a 3.6 GPA, why would I worry?
Right.
I had no reason to worry. They're doing great, but now I have a reason to look at that kid.
Yeah.
Because of what we're able to do with the numbers.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think in most, like, just kind of related to Dan's question, if you look at the average score by subject for SATs, 2025, huge jump. Like, we were averaging, between 5-point difference on average the last 3 years, and then literally jumps in math almost over 20 points on average. Do we know what's driving that?
Well, I think, so to be honest, I think there are more schools who are now, again, requiring the SATs. And so you then have more students who are taking classes and looking at it more seriously. I think, I would say that from 2020 to really 24, 23, 24, when schools were saying, we don't care, so you could take it and be like, if you did well, great, you then had to send in. But if it didn't do well, whatever. You know, it was kind of like one of those that made you look better, but you didn't want to send it if it hurt. I think now students are seeing the writing on the wall that it's coming back. There are more schools they're applying to that may want it, and because, honestly, because we are in an area where people can afford some SAT prep classes and all of that, and there might be those who are applying that can't, they then feel like it makes them look like a better candidate in doing better on that test. So I do think, and it's the same thing with like MCAS now, like we don't know what the long-term numbers of MCAS look like because now it's not a graduation requirement.
Yeah.
So we have no idea what that's actually going to do to that data, but I would say that has to do with, again, our teachers really setting high expectations for our kids and pushing them forward and trying to support this work, and then also our students and their families trying to get that leg up for college admissions process.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's hockey stick right there.
Yep. And that's a lot on an SAT, to be honest. Like that's a big jump on an SAT.
And more, do we know how many kids, is it the number of students, did that change this year? Or is it?
So right now, those that went to the Cape even, about 75%. So we have about 3/4 of our students at least take it. Doesn't mean they submitted.
Yeah.
But taking.
And are these only submitted or taken?
Taken.
Okay.
Because we get the score, we get the scores, but it's up to the student whether they submit those scores.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Wish that played a role in U.S. News, a bigger role.
Ready to move on?
Awesome.
Karen?
All right. We'll dig into the Rams district or Rams school goals. Sorry. No, you have to go to the game. The first link, like similarly to the district and the high school, is the document where our goals are more spelled out. It's 13 pages. So if you need a little light reading, that's available. Next slide. This is where I really want to highlight what we're doing, and then I'm going to go into a little bit of why we're doing it. So if we're talking about our 4 arches again, and we're talking about Arch 1, where we're communicating with families, we have to leverage this with our kids. There's a couple places where we need to continue to strengthen, and one is to not only have resources for families, but be able to communicate that in a way that everybody can access it all the time. So we are working on creating a resource hub for families that they can find more easily. And then we are also going to continue to have positive outreach increase in like our social media. That's where we get some negative press. So we're going to try to put the positive in there too. Social emotional well-being of our kids, that's a humongous aspect of a middle school experience. And they're like really fast cars with lots of things inside and not great brakes. And so we have to really provide a strong structure in their social emotional well-being. There are a lot of parts of their brain that are igniting for the first time, and it all falls under that Arch 2. So you're going to hear a lot of our MTSS Tier 1 supports in that arch because of who they are at this age. And then teaching and learning, we are still working on our interventions. We have our IXL data, we have our MCAS data, and we're still continuing to build capacity through our PD. As everybody else was mentioning, we have very clear goals with our PD, and that's to increase our Tier 1 MTSS supports. And then talent and resources, we're continuing to enhance our onboarding for teachers and paraprofessionals. We've had structured specific training, but now we have added some shadowing and some role-specific guidance in addition to the mentoring. And then we are also have our social emotional wellness group that promotes positivity with our staff and kind of like makes everybody feel comfortable doing what they're doing with the little machines every day. So as we kind of talk about all the pieces and parts, I really want to focus on connecting. So I want to make sure that I'm super clear connecting the attendance with the social emotional learning, with the curriculum, and then kind of what our data looks like as a result of that, and where we're seeing fantastic gains and where we still have work to do. So if we go to the next slide, we're looking at our attendance. And I think everyone knows here at this table that we've been making some changes for chronic absenteeism over the last few years, communicating with every single family once a month, really creating some targeted plans for kids with chronic absenteeism. The running attendance, top graphic there, you can see we are making improvements over the last 3 years. We went from 10% to 6%, and then hopefully this year we're going to be even better. What are we doing at Rams that's working? We have people creating plans for kids to step into the building on the first day. We have people creating plans to get kids out of cars and off buses. We have kids checking in more regularly. We have communication with families. We have people going out to families and working with them. How do we know it's working? If you look at the bottom two graphics, the one on the left, those are actual kids, but I took their names out. And those were sort of our kind of some, kids that had some chronic attendance issues in the last year. We put plans into place for them, and you can see the massive change in how they're attending school. And attending school means that you're getting the supports that we're able to offer there. You're in the classroom, you're working with counselors, you're working with teachers, you're interacting with your peers. So, if you just look at the very top student, they had around a 70% attendance rate last year, and this year so far it's 97.7. And then some other kids that were around 75 or 80 are now at 100%. So cool, but now what, right? So then this is all in Open Architects. So then we kind of said, well, who's on our watch list if those kids aren't on our watch list anymore? And again, that graphic on the right on the bottom, those are some kids that never had attendance issues before. Here they do. So now we have the ability to find these kids a little bit sooner and use these plans that are working for other kids and this menu of opportunities we have to get kids into the building. Middle school sensitive, and kids often in middle school, they'll tell you in their attendance whether or not they're struggling. I'm not going to go to school because I don't feel good. I'm not going to go to school because I'm uncomfortable. And so it's super important for us to keep looking at this piece of data, and that's why I wanted to show that to everybody. Also highlights what we can do with the data dashboard. Another huge piece that we've been working on at RAMS is our culture and climate, and really in October of 2023 reinvented our PBIS systems, which is a massive Tier 1 support under the Arch 2 social emotional learning. And what we saw when we added a really great platform, which used to be Kickboard and now is called Behavior Support, our trends and incidents went down from 160 in 23-24 to 129 last year. And we're able to not only see the final numbers in Open Architects and Kickboard, but we're able to track specific behaviors during certain times of year by certain groups at certain grades, even the time of day. So we can really break down the behaviors. That's huge in middle school. And our Metro West surveys, our SO teams, and we're even looking at some more frequent screeners to add to this. But as you can see from the running incidents over the last 3 years, we are trending lower. And as you can see by the other graphic on the right, we are expecting a spike in October, but we know that. and we can sort of preload some of the things that we need to do. Candy, Halloween, safety training, like all those things get the machines running. What I can tell you about the building from being in the building is that serious incidents are down. Bullying findings are rare. Kids can request a bullying investigation, parents request bullying investigations, we run them all the time, but the findings are rare. So we're doing a lot of education around what bullying is and what's circular and what's unkind. Students are reporting more concerns. They are doing something and then they're reporting what they did and asking for support. We have Challenge Day, we have other outlets for kids, but it's a calmer building. There's more greetings, there's more manners, there's more kindness. So the vibe is just, it's great. Another thing we're focusing on this year in that culture and climate, and again, this is a huge piece for middle school kids, is an opportunity to be involved in some sort of leadership. In 23-24, we had about 6% of the kids involved in leadership opportunities. Last year, we increased that to 28%. So we're going beyond the peer leader format. We still have that. We doubled it last year from like 48 to 80 something, and then this year we're up to about 95 kids wanting to be in the peer leader program. We have other things like student government, Project 351, Playbook Initiative, and then just ways that we're creating for kids to be involved. And so this year we're going to aim for 80% of our total population to be involved in leadership opportunities. So those are some of the ways that we're addressing culture and climate. We're also weaving that into our professional development. We're using the ruler curriculum, and we've created a bank of lessons that teachers are using in a dedicated time during Rams block once a week to teach these lessons. Those are Tier 1 MTSS ruler lessons that are grounded in high-quality, evidence-based curriculum and instruction. So all that's sort of our culture and climate. For teaching and learning, I did do a little MCAS data dive and unpacking because the scores just came out. They're important to take a look at. And so there's 3 different slides because if I put it all into one, it was super small. So if we kind of like click through, you'll see math, and then you'll see ELA, and then you'll see science. So if we're looking at kind of all 3 of those, and you can move through them at your own pace, I'm going to go over some trends that we saw and some things that we are doing as a result. And what I did with those trends was if you click on the link above that says sort of the MCAS data and unpacking, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. So you can either look at the words, you can look at the data, you can look at both, you can look at none and just listen, but it's all there in the slides for you to kind of access. So what we're seeing over time in ELA, in math, we're seeing that we've improved significantly since 2021, which is great. We're seeing, just in this slide, that different cohorts are performing differently over time. So the 6th grade cohort doesn't always perform the same. I think it's important to look at that as we're looking at trends, because this is last year's data. And so, we're looking at a difference in 6th grade performance from 81% in 23-24 to 69% in 24-25. We're looking at a much greater population of students on IEPs and needing specialized instruction. Am I doing something wrong?
No,
Okay.
I didn't know if on the left if that was just 6th grade.
Nope, that's everybody.
That's everybody.
Yeah, that's everybody.
Okay.
But the cohorts kind of give you an idea of why we might see a dip or why we might see an increase. We're pretty steady, but I know I heard people saying, why did the MCAS scores in math go down? That's not necessarily true. So while that may be true for this particular year, it may not be true for that particular group. So we would have to go back and look at their Miller scores in a different grade. We also have to remember that, as we kind of see the MCAS scores over time and we see us holding steady, what's causing us to hold steady? That's what we're looking at. And so what we have been able to identify through discussion and data and observation is that we have to improve our Tier 1 instruction, not just in math, but kind of overall, because we are holding steady. If we click to ELA, the ELA results are also holding steady. Nearly half of the students meeting or exceeding expectations over the last 3 years. So growth has leveled off, and the trend does show resilience compared to the state. It does signal a strong foundation, and we can build on that foundation with targeted literacy strategies and stronger MTSS supports. And again, you can see the testing by grade over time, and sometimes you'll see bigger fluctuations, and sometimes you'll see smaller ones. There's a smaller gap in that 6th grade, for example, in the ELA than there is in the math. And then we can take a look at science. And in science, the outcomes climbed sharply post-pandemic, with over 70% of students meeting or exceeding by 2024. And the challenge now is how to maintain that momentum. And so as we're looking at, well, what do we do to our curriculum, the teachers are actually writing improved ways to reach kids at that Tier 1 level. And this is for all kids. So when we're talking about receiving specialized instruction, that's often in addition to the general education instruction for many of our kids. So when we say improving Tier 1 instruction, it actually is for most of the kids in our building. And in our building, just so we can have a frame of reference on enrollment, we have about a third of the kids that are on IEPs, are multilingual language learners, or are on 504s. So that's 1/3 of the students. That's a lot of kids to kind of take into consideration. These test scores, just taking a look at them with you because it's the beginning of the year, it's definitely not the only thing we focus on in Open Architects, but it is something we take a look at around this time of year, and I think probably all of you did as well. But I want to jump ahead just a little bit, and we can go back to this later if you have questions. This is where we can really identify groups, next slide, and really kind of take a look at what Open Architects and looking at this data more quickly allows us to do for kids, and also what it shows. So this is just some ELA data. I couldn't put it all on there. There's too much. You can go down the wormhole of data for hours and hours and hours and go, oh, I wonder how attendance connects to MCAS, and I wonder how you can do that for hours. So I've just wanted to kind of show you some of the things that we look at to inform what we're doing for our Tier 1 instruction. We can find out like the distribution across performance levels, right, in MCAS. We can find out individual student growth. We can find out subgroup comparison. We can find out trends over time of percentages meeting and exceeding. We can use it for our universal supports. So like we are rewriting curriculum. We are rewriting assessments. We are having kids show things in different ways. The entire general education and special education staff is doing that. They're doing that for our curriculum, they're doing that for social emotional lessons, and we're doing that planning for executive skills. If we can offer that to all the kids at Robert Adams Middle School, you're going to see even more improvements. We're going to see even more improvements. We're going to see an even happier culture of kids walking around day to day. So the universal supports to adjust instruction and classroom strategies, that means we're changing how we're doing things. It doesn't mean we have to add a teacher. It doesn't mean we have to buy a ton of stuff. We're trying to shift something based on the shifts in how like students are changing all together all at once during professional development. So when we say we're kind of like trying to improve that, it doesn't always mean money or people or funding. And our staff is doing a great job with it. They're doing great. targeted interventions, we can see identifying subgroups and individuals for added supports. We can do focus on reteaching, on pacing, and on curriculum priorities. Professional collaboration, so we're reviewing at faculty meetings, at our SO meetings, at our PD sessions, at our Curriculum Tuesdays. We've even changed like the org chart for how we're referring students for IEPs or interventions. So there's been sort of an adjustment kind of overall for us. And I wanted to point something out. So if you look at the graphic on the left, I want you to look at the gray line that's in the middle, that those kids are like almost meeting expectations. So many of those kids are 1, 2, 3, 4 points away from meeting expectations, and so many of those kids are our high needs kids. By offering these Tier 1 supports in social emotional learning, in academics, in executive skills, I think we can bring those kids to meeting state expectations. I want you to take a look at the middle. This is where I went down a wormhole for a really long time, and where we're starting to go in our curriculum intervention meetings. These kids, right, who are receiving Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions, so that means from our curriculum interventionists and also special education, the growth for these kids is astronomical, and you can kind of see it from the numbers. Those are real kids. I just took their names off so that, for privacy, but you can see like their growth percentile, 96%, 67%, 71%. So I said, who's in these large groups of kids that grew? And I'm scanning the names, and I know the kids, and I'm saying they're on IEP, they're getting interventions. Wow, I wonder what the numbers are like. So in ELA, for example, we had 51 kids either receiving specialized instruction or getting interventions last year. And out of those 51 kids, 96% of those kids were receiving Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. What we're doing is working in Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. And in math, there were 61 kids that had, special education interventions. And out of those kids, 93% of them were in that high growth rate. So again, what we're doing for Tier 2 and Tier 3 is really, really working. It's not getting kids to test with the state where we want them over time, but we are hoping that when we add those Tier 1 supports that we're going to get there. It's super exciting. There's a ton of stuff to look at, but I hope I was at least clear enough in talking about our little middle school awesome machines that if we don't connect our attendance and our social emotional learning and our communication with families and our academics and our test scores, we don't connect all that, then we're going to be missing some things. We're making huge progress, and I hope that we make more for next year. Any questions?
You said you could kind of track back, talking about behaviors, to even the time of day. Mm-hmm. Are there certain times that you're seeing, like lunch and?
Yeah. Okay. It all gets more exciting after lunch. And we could have told you that too, but
you probably didn't need the data to, but it's helpful to see.
And to see like what's happening on those days where it might be a little bit higher. Like if it's raining and we don't go to take them outside, we have more incidents, so just finding different ways to engage kids during lunch, right, and during their free time, and get them to move a little bit more in those MTSS Tier 1 strategies, that's really going to be helpful. After lunch. Who knew?
So since we're talking about rankings today too, no one's mentioned it, but I just want to highlight that Rams is in the 90th percentile, which is incredibly impressive to be outperforming 90% of elementary and middle schools across the state. And this is the third year that the middle school has been in the top 10% of elementary and middle schools across the state, so I think that's worth noting. You got me looking at the cohort data because you highlighted the cohort data, so I wonder if we could go back to slide 18. And this, it looks like it's math MCAS data. And when you said cohorts, you pointed me toward an interesting trend where if you look diagonally and you follow the kids from 6th grade to 7th grade the next year to 8th grade, you notice that they dip in 7th and then go up again in 8th, not always to where they started, but sometimes to where they started, or it depends, but there's always that dip in 7th grade. So I wondered if your team has talked about that pattern and how you are supporting students in different grades or thinking about instruction differently for different grades.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a notice right now, and you can, in Open Architects, you can actually pull out one cohort and you can follow them for all of time, like that we have the testing, so it's pretty cool. The tests are different.
Yeah.
That's one thing. The 8th grade test is just, the 8th grade math test is, it's always harder. It's just always the hardest test the kids are taking. 6th graders tend to be more concrete thinkers, and their test is a little more, concrete. And as they get older, they end up in that more like critical thinking part of math, and it's less concrete. But not all the kids are ready for that. They will be. They just may not be there. But that's what the test measures. So I think there's a lot of things to take a look at. And it isn't that the 6th grade teachers are necessarily teaching 6th grade math better than 7th grade teachers are teaching 7th grade math. It's just, well, what can we do to kind of change it? So we do have ALN coming in. They are helping us look at our assessments and the ways that kids are able to express like how they're learning things, and they're helping us look at differentiation. So I'm hoping that kind of gives us a little bit of insight into that 7th and 8th grade dip. Yeah. It's not unique to Holliston.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It looks different across different schools, but yes, you often do see different things in different grades, but it's how do we respond to that?
Yeah.
My other question was slide 15.
One thing I was just gonna throw in on this one, like we had kids move in too. For example, like I wanted to know how many families moved in after our last the events we have for kids to transition from 5th to 6th grade, like how many kids moved into the district. So that was since August 21st. We've had 22 new kids at Rams. So sometimes the population can change, and that can change our scores as well. So yes, you heard me right. I double checked it today. 22 new kids since August 21st at Rams.
And how many we lost? Just so we understand, what's the net, I guess?
Oh.
That's a large number.
No.
But 22 is a large number.
Yes.
Yeah.
A few years ago it was like 30. Last year it wasn't as high, but we do get a lot of kids. It changes the flavor of what you're doing. Not a lot, but enough to pay attention to. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, that's good to know. On this slide, I was looking for Arch 3. You're working on aligning curriculum with the frameworks. Are there areas where you identified where our curriculum is not aligned with the frameworks?
No, that's a weird sentence because I wrote "and the equity audit findings." So it's supposed to be, no, they're aligned with the state frameworks. But they also need to be aligned with the equity audit findings, and then we need to update our assessments to reflect that. So like if they're only, if you're giving math tests and they're all written math tests and there's no project-based learning or universal design, you're not really addressing things we found out, and we know, right, from the equity audit, right, that not all kids learn the same, not all kids have the same background and experience. So I think it's math frameworks and the equity audit findings. Does that make sense?
I think so. So I just want to make sure I'm connecting it with the rest of it. So if we're focusing on standards-based instruction, updating assessments to align with capturing different ways that kids can demonstrate their mastery, how does that align with the PD on executive functioning strategies and technology?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so I'm just trying to connect the first one, which is like what we're going to focus on with instruction, to the last one, which is how we're going to support teachers of PD.
So our PD is like really focused on three big things. It's the social emotional lessons, it's the executive skills lessons, and then it's our curriculum. So that that stage 2 UBD documents.
Okay.
So those are like our three big picture things. And so executive skills can be taught in the classroom, and I consider them teaching and learning. Social emotional skills can be taught in the classroom, and I consider them teaching and learning. And we use our teaching and learning time, and we're creating those lessons as well as our backward design unit stage 2, focusing on assessments during our PD.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's also like this is hard for me to summarize what we're doing in Arch 3, but I think it's more spelled out in that 13-page document. So like, I wonder if maybe if you scan that, if it's still not clear, I can work on my wording, or you can ask me some more questions.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else for Karen?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. So I think since we do have Frank Gervasio here, I think we'll kind of move our agenda around a little bit and talk about the high school MSBA SOI update.
Just getting going, right? I know the select board by 9:30 is petering out, but you're the school committee and you're just halfway through.
So I asked, thanks for joining us, Frank, and I appreciate the late hour. So I did ask Frank to join us because we did talk a little bit at Budget Sub today, and we're going to talk again tonight about adding an addendum basically to our SOI, and this was after a meeting that Frank and David and I, as well as David List and James Keast and Matt Robshaw actually too, did with MSBA a couple weeks ago. And some of the things that have changed since we submitted our application allowed us to now beef up that application. So we brought you this as a potential vote for tonight. But the biggest thing is adding the potential of priority area 4 again. And that's based on new information since the SOI related to the 40B projects, which Frank can certainly speak to a lot better than I can. But you'll see that I did put his chart into the document there as well with some of the information related to that. So he's here to answer any questions for you about that.
Would it be helpful for me to run through the different 40B projects that are sort of active at the moment? We can go from there.
I think so.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I'll run, I guess I'll do it backwards since Lowen Street is the biggest one, and then we'll go from the ones that are, I guess, a little bit more closer to the finish line. So the Lowen Street project that's proposed is sort of in the earliest stage possible. When a developer wants to move forward with a 40B project, they have to submit an application to Mass Housing, and then Mass Housing will then determine whether or not the project can move forward through the 40B process. Mass Housing has yet to even issue that determination. At this point in the process, they're still reviewing the developer's application. During that period, the town also has the opportunity to submit comments to Mass Housing while they're doing their review, and the town submitted their comments on Monday or Tuesday of this week. I want to thank Dr. Jordan and Dr. Kuska for their partnership on that. So Mass Housing will review that. They'll review the application that the developer submitted. But as far as the numbers are concerned, it is a 250-unit development proposed. The bedroom count, and I can send all this out later if you'd like, but the bedroom counts on those are 108 one-bedrooms, 112 two-bedrooms, and 30 three-bedrooms. And those could be subject to change. Again, it's early in the process, but that is what the application calls for now. So just to review, that one is not actively under review of the ZBA. That's later in the process. My guess is that would start sometime in maybe early 2026. So I guess just to, again, move a little bit backwards to the ones that are a little bit more fully baked. The Concord Street proposal is a 54-unit proposal. That one is actively being heard by the ZBA. It is 24 one-bedrooms, 24 two-bedrooms, and 6 three-bedrooms. Again, so that's 54 units. That's just off Concord Street. And again, the ZBA is actively hearing that one. The third one is Jeffrey Park, which is off of Turner Road, sort of the back end of Turner Road. I think it's also been referred to as Indian Ridge South. So that this one's changed up a little bit. So this was originally slated for 20 single-family home units, and then there's going to be 2 duplexes, so it would have been 24 units in total. So that was originally approved in 2021. The developer went back before the ZBA to see if they could add additional units. So the ZBA just wrapped up its hearings on those, and just sort of based on the way that that's going, I would suspect that that is now going to be 40 units. So it's going to be 20 duplexes, and those will all be 3-bedroom units. So that's 40 3-bedroom units in total. So between all 3 of those, it would be a total of 344 units. Again, that's as all of the applications stand currently. It is very early days for the biggest one, obviously on Lowland Street. I guess just to give a little bit of a sense of where the timeline is on all of these. Jeffrey Park is just about wrapped up from the ZBA's perspective. Concord Street, again, is in process. I'd expect if those move forward, maybe you're looking at construction sometime in 2026. The developer for the Lowland Street project has indicated that an ideal, or sort of what they're holding right now on their calendar, an ideal outcome for them is construction to begin spring, summer 2027. So we're looking at a ways off before people are actually living in any of these. But obviously, these are 50, 60, 70-year buildings, so we want to obviously be aware of what's coming down the pipe. So I'm happy to answer any general questions. And also, while I have everyone's focus on 40Bs, I just point out that on the town's website, we have a new sort of icon on the homepage for the Lowland Street application materials. We also have, you can also look at the rest of the applications for the other projects. We also have a little video of a presentation that we asked town council to come and give us on how the 40B process works, what the town's process is, or what's the town involved with, what's the town really not involved with, how the process really streams through or is run through the ZBA. And so hopefully that'll be helpful for folks who might be unfamiliar with how the process works, because it's sort of daunting, and we are about the SHI number that we're at is 4%, so that means 4% of our housing stock is deemed as affordable. When you hit the 10% number, that's sort of when you go into what's called safe harbor, and 40Bs aren't as I guess permissible. There's other ways that they can sort of get in there, but that's usually the standard that we're held to. So we're well below that 10% threshold at 4%. So even if these were to not move forward, there's still room for another developer to come in and propose something new. So happy to answer any general questions and follow up on others as needed.
Thank you. Yeah, so to clarify, this was a recommendation from the group from MSBA that we met with, wasn't 4 individuals on this meeting, and they strongly recommended adding this because that could, positively impact our application. But also we did discuss some other items that could help support why the need is significant related to our septic system that James Keese was able to talk about. We have a waiver right now on the septic system?
Yeah, I mean, some additions that we had since we submitted the application last spring to where we are right now that we brought up in this BA. One is we did have kind of failed septic system that we have a waiver for, that we brought their attention to. Just some additional condition and concerns that we have with our boiler and HVAC. Specifically around, James was able to offer some efficiency numbers connected with our proximity. If you know where the high school is, the boiler is on actually by the field house, a far extremity of the building, so it's inefficient to move heat from that end of the building all the way to the far extremities of the building. Most more modern buildings, the heating source is centralized. It's more efficient that way. Addition, we have single pane windows that have been here since the build 60 years ago that we had, and not only are they kind of easy to push open, there's a safety risk associated with it, but they're incredibly inefficient as far as heating and cooling that we have. As well as our buildings do not maintain heating or cooling at any point in time, because we are predominantly we have a second floor, we're predominantly a first floor building with courtyards in the middle and spread out. So we have a lot of touch points with the outside, which causes our buildings to lose heat and cooling pretty significantly. We are seeing some kind of additional leaking while we are on this movement of our primary location being the middle school roof and Placentino Miller roof being the secondary one. Our high school roof is still in rough condition and needs to be on kind of that replacement plan as well. And then we were able to kind of talk about parking. We were able to talk a little bit about some of the town issues with Mark Tree that we have, and just some of the traffic that we have on Hollis Street, and kind of bring that into light to them. So it was encouraging. They were asking a lot of questions. They mentioned that we are in the group of about 17 schools that they're seriously considering. Last year they funded 22. So just that doesn't necessarily mean anything. They could fund 2 schools this year, but just keep that in mind.
So would you say overall that the call you had was the most positive that we've had so far in the sort of the 6 years we've been doing this?
Yeah, we did feel pretty encouraged 2 years ago with the senior study, and then having them come back a second time and really to encourage us and give us ideas, such as, to talk about the different projects and really giving us feedback. We did feel pretty optimistic. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but it definitely was encouraging in the phone call, and they were very positive and supportive.
It does seem like the step past the senior study, and that they have all that knowledge, and now they're asking questions beyond the knowledge that they already have.
Digging a little deeper, and they said that's why they didn't come back to do another senior study, because they already were here 2 years ago, and this was the next step for them.
Right. No, I don't think we want to be overly positive, but at the same time, I think it's important that we're as close as we've ever been, if not, maybe even there. But maybe this is the year, because obviously once we are accepted into or invited into the MSBA process, there's a real sort of schedule that needs to be followed and studies that need to be done and things like that. Frank, I just have a quick question for you.
Sure.
The 4%. That's really low, right? And that sort of, is that part of the reason why Holliston is attractive to 40B developers? Because
I would assume so. Part of me wishes I was a real estate developer, and I could answer that question a little bit better for you. But yeah, I'd have to imagine, just given our location to 495, the Pike, and I mean Holliston's obviously just a nice town.
Fabulous school system. Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot to gain from living here, and obviously anywhere this part of the state, housing is expensive. So that's if you can find, these are all rental units, by the way. Yes, at least the Lowen Street and the Concord Street ones are all rental units. I'm not sure about Jeffrey Park. So there's obviously a little bit less of a barrier to having to buy a home. So yeah, I'd have to imagine that's a big piece of it.
Right, and at 4%, though, that makes it really difficult. Should the town have concerns, though, to sort of successfully push back and kill a project, right?
Yes, we'd be in a hard position to kill a project, yeah.
So it is more likely than not that these projects, if the developer, goes forward and everything works out with the sites and they still feel it's an attractive investment, that they will proceed.
Yeah, I mean, all things being equal, I would think so. I mean, the Lowland Street site definitely has its challenges, just given its location, the amount of, and the developer was quite candid with us when we were doing the site walk. The amount of money that they're going to need to treat all that wastewater on site, that's going to be, I imagine, a substantial cost. But yeah, all things being equal, yeah, there's not a lot that we can do at this point to twist arms.
And has the select board and the town considered, as part of this, partnering with the developer on especially the wastewater treatment plant to potentially ensure that it's of size that actually it could be offered to other businesses in Lowland Street to sort of help development of that industrial park?
To date, that has not been discussed, no.
I'm going to throw it out there.
Consider it thrown.
I heard Mr. Sparrow talk about, having some curb appeal and sidewalk, that sort of the work of fully sort of developing it, because that part of Lowland needs some TLC, right? Like that's it's pretty ugly. If all these projects were approved, what would our affordable housing stock go to as a percentage?
We would be just over 10%. Would be at like 10.5%.
Okay.
And so the denominator changes, so it's as a percentage of your total housing stock. So if our housing stock were to grow otherwise, there's a good chance that we would fall below that. Even assuming all these three went through, we'd fall below that 10% at some point. So we would just sort of be teetering there. But for the time being, these would get us over 10%.
So this is, in all likelihood, this would be more or less sort of the capacity for these projects.
Yeah, unless our housing stock changes in a dramatic way, yeah.
If you talk to the Board of Assessors, they'll tell you that there aren't many buildable lots left to change that. So, and they've been saying that for a few years. So, great.
I have one question. Understanding Lowland in the beginning stages, and the developer pulls out, that will not be decided before this SOI. So, is this locked? Once we get in, say these properties or proposed properties help us get invited, them not getting approved down the road, does that impact anything that beyond the acceptance?
No, once we're in the process, because we're not promising them that it's going to happen. Yeah. We're just saying that it's proposed, and that there's a willingness from the community and the school committee to consider changing the grades as a result of that, because it would necessitate it. So once we're in the loop.
It's based off the information you have at the moment that you submit the application. Even if you go back 1 year prior, we were projecting increased enrollment based off of our kindergarten numbers, and then we removed that out. Now we're a year from there, and we've got 40B numbers that might kind of increase that enrollment as well. So I just think once we kind of get into that process, is something to be considered, that's something that, if things change, doesn't necessarily impact us. So.
No, when we look at the letter, I provided some suggested edits and things in a version I think Sarah put into the drive.
Did you get the updated one from?
Thank you for. Yes.
And then Dan. Okay. Lisa did a different version than did she? I don't know if she sent you.
Oh.
So just if you share it with her, she'll update it.
Okay.
We don't have any more questions for Frank.
I don't think we have any more. Do we have any more questions for Frank?
No.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
The other, as we look at the letter, I spoke with Representative DeRosa today and a representative from President Spilka's office just to request additional letters of support. They have been very supportive and helpful to us in the past for providing letters of support for our application. But I thought that, given how close we are right now, any little thing could help. I don't think that necessarily those letters put you over the top, but certainly they demonstrate continued support. And then just the one sort of real material thing that I added was just the override that we passed last year. I think, one of the things that the MSBA does look for is community support for the schools and some ways of demonstrating that. And I think that override passing with 67% in favor is a huge feather in our cap. Obviously, this is a totally different ball of wax and ass that we'll eventually have, but so 68. I thought it was 67.4, but and then the other thing, just talking about the likelihood of the 40Bs going forward, or if not those 40Bs, other 40Bs. I mean, it's sort of clearly with 3 40Bs popping up within a fairly short period of time, there's something about Holliston that's attractive, and whether it's one, yeah, well, exactly. And so if these don't work out for some reason, there are other locations where they could put them, and I think that, we will see these projects.
So you would just have to vote to add priority area number 4 to the SOI application, and they will accept this as the part of the application process.
How would you want to just go through the edits? Do you want to sort of give Sarah the sort of the power to sort of just finalize the letter? Because my changes were more sort of kind of around the fluff, if you will, around it, not the core portion of it, which is adding back that priority area.
I've read through the letter. I'm okay with giving Sarah the authority to make final edits and then come in and sign it and get this out. But we also do have to vote.
Yes, they asked when we would be voting on this, and they were hoping that we'd get this to them as soon as possible tomorrow.
Tomorrow, sure. Okay.
And Sarah, I can work with you on filing too, but this is really great, and I think that hopefully, well, exciting. Obviously, we don't want to be overly excited, but it's a little scary too. Sometimes you're running after and trying to catch something for something, and then you do, and then you're like, well, what do I do with it? It's like when the cat catches the bird. I mean,
So 2 motions?
Yep. So you need a...
we don't need to go back through and read the official language.
No,
right?
the last time we didn't. I think it's just a vote to add priority 4.
So I'll make a motion to add priority 4 to our SOI submission, and to approve sending this letter with Sarah making sort of final edits and signing off on that tomorrow.
Second.
All in favor? So I
that was roll
update
call,
that at the bottom. So 7.
Yeah.
Or do I do a roll call?
Let's just do a roll call because
Okay, sure. Roll call. Vote. Joe?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Hillary? Yes. Tracy?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Dawn?
Yes.
Sarah, yes. Okay, so let's see, where are we on the agenda? Shall we move back to central office updates?
I don't really have anything more to add. We talked already. The students had so much to say already that I would have echoed, so I'll leave it at that.
Look for a teaching and learning newsletter coming out at the end of the month. We're currently working on it right now. Also look for a fall Title I event at Placentino coming up in November. All schools are currently working on a November 4th PD day. Lots of planning involved in that. Our ELA curriculum review leadership team is working with DESE coaches right now. Phenomenal people that know a lot, so really looking forward to working with them throughout the year. And last, I will be attending a Project Lead the Way conference for the district in Framingham, and they scheduled it on Diwali. So I wonder how the attendance will be for that conference. I don't know. So that's it.
The kind of an update on transportation. We are still looking for drivers. Our capacity is 17 buses at the elementary school complex and 15 buses at Miller at the secondary schools, are what we're budgeted for. We are down a driver, so we're actually running at about 15.5 buses. The 0.5 is the after school program, the transportation there. Susan and I have discussed, like, as far as communicating something out in a newsletter, but I'm just kind of sharing it here as far as seeking 7D drivers. These are more of the smaller buses and vans that we have that transport in district, mostly for special education, that we have in district. It's less of a big, scary, full-size CDL licensed bus. It's an easier process to go. So, any retirees or individuals just kind of looking for a low-key job. These are buses that typically have a small number of students, smaller bus to drive or van, and have a monitor associated with it. So I think that we're always out there appealing for those types of drivers. I appeal for the 7D drivers because Holmes Transportation, we do have contract for drivers that were CDL licensed drivers that are driving their 7D buses. That we could, if we could find some 7D drivers in districts, we could move into the CDL drivers to kind of fill with that. But that continues to be a struggle in a lot of districts. I think Medway is down 3 drivers at the moment on their CDL driver buses, and are running into some similar issues to us. We continue to just kind of like make little tweaks or adjustments to our routes. Bus 6, we communicated out to families last week or earlier this week. Friday we communicated, but Monday it went into effect. Some adjustments based off of where we felt the route could be a little bit safer as far as some of the stops. Part of the value of having Tim Holmes, which is the owner of the bus company driving Bus 6, is he's able to make some adjustments to the route based on what we knew. So we made some of those adjustments. Our buses should be arriving, and for all that I know, are arriving on time. We had one bus that we learned that had a sub-bus driver on it for the last week that has been showing up to the middle school during the homeroom arrival, and we've kind of made some tweaks there. But again, families at any point in time can communicate out to me any needs or questions they have about transportation.
Can I add one thing to the transportation, which I should have mentioned already? Today I attended the MASS Executive Board meeting in Assabet Collaborative, and the Inspector General attended that meeting, and I just thought it would be interesting to know that the legislature has asked the Inspector General to do an investigation on special education costs and transportation, because they've seen these significant increases that we're all dealing with. They may consider also doing one on out-of-district tuition and things like that, because we've talked before about how the 14% increase 2 years ago, but some districts it actually was 32%, because they could get waivers on that. So anyhow, I just wanted you to know it was encouraging to hear that they're investigating that to see if there's anything that could be done, because the costs, as you know, have been significant to budget. So he will be starting that investigation shortly, I think in February or something. So that was encouraging, I thought.
Yep.
Do you have anything to add?
Yes. So I'm at the end here. So one of the things I have in your packet, we put in a form that backed up 3 years, giving you the numbers for 504 plans as well as our out-of-district numbers. You'll note that the October 2025 count does indicate that the number has gone down for out-of-district. We can attribute some of that to students have aged out, or they might have moved, or have come back into the district to participate with the community here in town. And all of the things, these numbers from here, as well as last week, I've shared with the SSAs across the 4 schools, and we're going to take a little deeper dive into what is happening with the numbers year over year over year for the last 5 years in terms of when they're shifting up, and try to see if we can find any dots to connect. And then, of course, what I thought was very exciting is listening to what is happening at the middle school and the high school, and see if there's any connection between what those numbers are doing and what's happening there. One other thing I will share that's not in your packet, so it was sort of hot off the press. In the last week, we've received, and we haven't received all of them because our students don't attend every one of these schools, but the state has, we've asked the state to take a look at a number of our out-of-district schools. We participate in 4 of, I think, the recent 9 or 10 who have put in for reconstruction and raising their rates. And they're not just raising their rates a little bit this time, they're raising the rates a lot. And the problem is, of course, they raised them 2 years ago, and then they raised them 2 years prior. So I think it behooves us now, even though I'm obviously here through June, but looking long term, are there some of these students that we can help stay with us in our classes? I can't say there is, but I think we need to look at who's raising the rates, what type of population they're serving, and are there other ways to approach it. I do know that the directors have asked for us to go, a group to go to the MASS group to talk to the superintendents, as well as then turn around and investigate with the state why there's a sudden rush to raise prices again.
Could you put together, if it's not too much trouble, a memo for us on this and what the actual sort of increases are? Because I know I've had conversations with Representative Irina DeRosa, and he had actually, I don't know if he filed legislation or he was trying to do something where after the 14% increase, he was trying to cap it at like 2% a year for 5 years. So getting the evidence of what is actually happening and being able to provide that to him, I think would be very helpful.
I have some numbers from MASS today that I can share as well, but we did get some the new rates for October. So we, sometimes one district might get a different price than another district at the same school. So it's,
it depends on need, obviously, of our students, but
the increase could be higher.
Absolutely. So it's not that we say, well, we won't allow a student to leave the district because the tuition is too high. We'll never, ever, ever do that. But what we do want to do is be reflective of what we're able to provide for our students in our own district first, before we look to see where they need to leave.
So we can put something together for you. And I think the thing we talked about today is that these students, it's really about, they were saying that their staffing issues was a reason for this 14% allowance that year, but we were all dealing with staffing issues. So why is that the only group of people that can do a 32% increase? And we were all stuck with making cuts.
Right.
So.
No, absolutely, and that is what he sort of was focusing on, and how unfair that is to the districts.
Well, yes, there's that. It does put a lot of pressure on districts. The other piece to just keep in mind is for a lot of these schools, not all of them, but for a lot of the schools, they have 501(c)(3) status, so they're able to do fundraising at the same time. They're actually charging us tuition, so I can't explain why they're asking for the numbers they're asking for. We have an opportunity to go to sessions and hear what they're saying with DESE. A lot of times, though, we don't get a lot of notice for them. And, of course, our calendars, sometimes we can't empty our calendar and leave the district. So that's been a constant situation over the years when we've had reconstruction since I've been doing this. Right. But I'll be really keeping my ear to the ground this year.
We'll try to empower our elected officials, the state to help us because they live there, right?
So I'll work on that.
One last question. The drop in out-of-district placements was part of sort of an expectation that we had when we were doing the budgeting for the override. I know you weren't here, so this is not a fair question to ask you, but maybe Dr. Cusker or Dr. Jordan or Dr. Menard knows. I can't remember exactly, but is this about the number that we were expecting? I thought it was 4, 6, sort of some net for this year.
What we're netted for this
that we were projecting, back in 2024.
Yeah, I would have to do it compared to where we are, because we were projected last year to return 6, or age out, and the total being 6, and we ended up being more like 4 last year.
But I thought last year was this year.
Sorry,
for this
yeah.
As we were projecting it last year for this year.
So we are, I think we're at about 4 versus the 6 that we were anticipating.
Oh, this is down 6.
It is. Went from 45 to 39.
You can get back. We don't need to, I'm just trying to figure out.
I have to look at the presentation from last year.
But again, I think the important thing too is that, because there were a lot of questions about those numbers that we were putting together, and I think that, that for the most part, one way or the other, it has sort of played out. Obviously, there are underlying increases, shifts in who those kids are and what the tuition costs are and everything, but.
Well, we do all this really great work, and we help our students come back to be a part of our community, and then the rates for the ones who remain out skyrocket, and it's almost like it evens out as if we didn't work hard and help our students to be successful. At the same time, I like to take a look down the road in terms of how many students might be aging out, because that is obviously by attrition, numbers will drop. But when those leave, there are others that are coming in.
But I think it's an important argument. Like if we are projected at what was intended based off in 2024, yet we're having these situations that are outside of our control where they're increasing tuition at exponential rates, like another 14% or another 7% here or there. That's something we just need to account for.
Well, it's just important to be able to explain to the community too, as things go forward, that we can look at the students and do our best at projecting and even be right on the numbers.
Well, we did our part.
We did our part, but you can't. If someone's going to raise rates to 32%, you can't possibly, account for that.
It's a lot. I was just trying to quickly jump to one of our letters, oops, that's not going to be one of our letters. I was just trying to find a quick one just to give you an idea, but I can't put my hands on it fast enough. I don't want to take your time tonight, but we are concerned about the range of increases.
Any other questions? Okay. Reports from subcommittees. Communications?
Yes. So realize that the judge doesn't have. We put together a letter announcing HYA. There is no potential vote on there, so I think we're stuck, or how do we want to handle that?
We're good.
I think we can approve the communication.
It's a communication that will be communicated to the community and thus public.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right, we can pull it up in our packet then. It is in there.
I think it's great. I think you just did a great job. My only question is,
It was this group right here.
That's great. You did a great job. It's wonderful. 5 stars.
Keep going.
Okay. As far as the timeline goes, there's March coming in here, and then late winter. I think it's February and then February.
Yeah. You want me to, all right, so selection process February and selection or appointment.
Yep.
February. Okay. You're right. It's late May and then
But I think the letter is
Yeah, I thought it was
really good. Yeah.
Then we just need to figure out, we talked to this committee, well, we're meeting again next week, next Thursday. We have it scheduled is walking through this communication plan as we go through this process. Like we got surveys that send out, community forums. I know HYA is sending out invites too.
No, it's all going to come through us.
Okay, so we're going to put together a plan for that, and we'll come to the next meeting and share that on the 23rd, just so we can review and make sure we're comfortable with it, and then hit the ground running.
We may need to send out something earlier. First of all, we're going to have to send out the link to the survey, because we're going to open that on the 16th or 17th.
You're right.
So I think we should. I don't know if all that needs to go through like an official communication meeting, so you guys have to post. I think I'm comfortable with Sarah. Sort of, these are going to provide most of the sort of the templates, I think, for sending it out. So I
They're
don't
sending
know.
a survey the same survey we got yesterday, we're reviewing it, the template, or is it?
Yeah, that link that we agreed that I think we're going to open that on the 16th or 17th.
To move fast, I'm okay with just Sarah.
I'm going to be talking to them tomorrow.
Yeah.
So.
So I'll just make a motion to sort of empower Sarah to be a dictator of the school committee for the next.
I'm not a dictator.
To empower Sarah to send out at least the survey communication in order to
Be
ensure
very
timely
bare
answer.
bones. Here's a survey. Please voice your.
Yeah. But then obviously there'll be other communications about but they will do I think a lot of it when they're reaching out to individuals in small groups.
We did talk about that as well, so then when they repeated that on Thursday night.
But then they're going to be they're going to be focus groups. They're going to be 2 community forums, at least one in person, and one virtual.
One in the morning, one at night.
One in the morning, one at night. I'm trying to.
We got a lot. I think we have to prepare. What might be helpful following this, announcing they're coming or they're here. Preparing the community for what is coming and for ways to participate, and then having the communication when that time comes. Because if they get dropped a community forum, people might not see it. So see that these are all things to participate in. Be on the lookout for invites to those, including the survey.
Sure.
So we can do that next comms meeting. Put that together.
So we'll you'll get that out tomorrow
morning.
Okay, then we're going to get a website section of our website going and post all the documents.
Yes, I'll follow up on that as well.
Yeah, you mentioned it too. Just earlier tonight too.
That's it for communications. We'll meet next Thursday.
Policy, we're meeting on Tuesday next week, and so we'll likely have an update at the next school committee meeting.
Budget.
So we had a meeting earlier today. We went over a whole bunch of things, including discussing the status of the MSBA application. Right now, we're maintaining our capital request. One of our capital requests for the parking lot and sidewalks at Placido Miller is going to be funded. At least the finance committee is going to recommend funding it $175,000 from capital and $100,000 from already appropriated funds for sidewalks that are already in the town. And the finance committee has worked with the town on that. So I don't think we necessarily need to revote the request, but that it's not. If you see 175 on the sort of the motion at town meeting, it's because other money is coming from already appropriated money. The select board did end up including the $1.35 million for the roof on the warrant. The finance committee is going to be making a recommendation at town meeting, and that will be somewhat dependent on a final certification of free cash, and then we'll have to see if we know at that point if we were invited or if we received a grant from the MSBA. That could change the timing a little bit, but at the same time, one of the important things for all these projects is certainty of funding, and so we'll have to see. I think it's important that we try to go forward and get that at town meeting if the funds are available and doesn't put the town into low capital.
We're expected to hear back around Monday.
So the meeting is on the 29th of October for the MSBA. In the past, they have posted the materials which list the sort of proposed projects a week or two in advance. So I'd say it's 50-50 that we know.
Could drop at town meeting.
We could drop it at town meeting probably that morning, but or that afternoon. But yes, it could drop at town meeting. I did prepare a letter to send out to the community about our request. Did you upload that one to the file to the shared drive too? basically, for anyone watching, there are a couple. We have a number of requests. It is a pretty significant capital request, especially once you add the roof on there. There is some. There has been some pushback to funding the roof. This is an incredibly important project, even if we don't receive the MSBA grant, because there is water coming into our elementary school, and just as you wouldn't want to go work in an office building where it was raining. We don't want our kids and our staff working in those conditions either. And there's also the CP. I don't know if you remember the last meeting. The CPC approved the flag project, but there was some dissent. So while that is not our project, we obviously support it, and there might be some debate about that. So I prepared a brief for me letter.
I was wondering if it could be a tiny bit shorter too, but
it's only 5 pages.
Oh my gosh,
No, it's 2 with graph, with a graphic.
Do we want to amend it tonight, or do we want to leave it?
We have to do it. We're not meeting before the.
I know, but we could also let Sarah have final edits. We could maybe try.
That's fine. Sarah can have final edits, and I can work with Sarah to finalize it. And then the other thing is, I think that we should send out just a reminder. This is a reminder to attend town meeting, and a request to attend town meeting, that maybe we send out on Monday, coming Monday, so it doesn't sort of cross paths with our other communications, but that we then send out one final reminder either the Friday or Monday of town meeting, which is just a reminder to show up. That's my thinking.
But you know what? Let's have it hit people's. I think Sarah's
circulating
and let people.
It's a very good letter.
But if it's a letter from all of us, they need to have a chance to look.
No, just saying I did a very good job with it.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Me and Dan could just put his name on it. Chairman of the subcommittee.
I'm second chairman of the subcommittee on the budget of the Holliston School Committee.
here, let's move on to the next thing, and I'll get it there. Hold on. Superintendent eval will hold for now. And the math advisory.
We met last week. We're meeting again next week, and we are still on track to have a recommendation by the end of the calendar year.
Okay. Superintendent search update would be old business.
We kind of did that.
We just kind of, yeah. We pretty much. Is there anything else we need to mention about that? No. Okay.
Just got to discuss my grade letter.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to get it there.
It's 10:04. This is why I wait for these letters to come up at this hour, because it's more likely to be just like, yeah, whatever.
It's in there.
Okay. That's excited to
It's
read
taking
it.
forever to even open, Dan. Oh.
It's the Wi-Fi.
The paragraphs.
Yeah.
It's long.
I can't. It's not even in my inbox. Did you not send it to me? Oh, I have it. I wrote
I
it.
think you wrote it.
Oh, you put it in the drive.
It's in the drive. Yeah.
I still not see it. Let me refresh again.
Are we sending this at a different time so that families won't get confused with the multiple?
I was suggesting Monday. Yeah.
So send one out Friday for the
10.
Send that out tomorrow and the other one Monday.
I found it. I definitely shouldn't be voting on something.
I created a chart.
It's lovely.
It's a lot of numbers and words. It's not all spaced out. There's a lot of numbers right next to words. The 1.3 and the 2.7 are right next to each other. So which one is it?
I will tweak formatting of the chart. I actually have to update it because I want to go back to 275 for the.
I think that under capital requests, the sentence that starts after some debate, I feel like we could cut that and just go to, we believe this is a critical request.
Well, the reason I included that is it was a 2-to-1, vote to even include it on the warrant, even after the Finance Committee had, voted to recommend it at town meeting. So there was a dissenting vote on the select board.
It's on the warrant, though.
That piece will be on the warrant, and the Finance Committee did recommend it.
Okay.
Can I take it out?
We did authorize you to have the lunch.
Well, we haven't actually voted it yet. And if we all read through it, maybe we don't have to put it all in Sarah.
Yeah, that would be great.
Well, I guess the only thing
Yes.
is to ensure that people understand that this is, like, most times capital is not even debated at town meeting.
Yes.
So, right, so I think it's important that we ensure that people understand that it will be, and if they
And we do with the last sentence, we expect this request to be debated and ask that you come. I'm fine with
okay,
that.
that's fair enough.
Before that sentence, instead of saying you children, can say your children.
Yes.
I may have been having a moment.
You children.
10:07.
It's late, but looking at, I get so many emails, I'm going to look at this and be like, there's too much information.
That's
Way too long.
Can we also? But it's so.
But no one's going to read it. It's great information.
So how about, here's my proposal.
Solar lease is a huge paragraph.
Yeah.
Well,
Look at the
Do we have-
bolded area.
that's why I put it down below.
Do we have another meeting before town meeting?
No, I mean we have the meeting before town meeting.
We have a meeting right before town meeting.
But this needs to go out.
No, and this could go out. I'm just asking, so we don't have a meeting on the Thursday before town meeting?
No.
Okay.
No.
After.
And I think
I was going to say a shorter, more concise reminder right before.
No, I want to, but that would just be a very simple show up to support town meeting. There are these critical asks that are on there that we want your
When
support
are we approving that?
right now.
The short, concise one?
The short, concise one is this, but without the words.
Okay, but are we asking someone to put that together before town meeting?
I will put it in Sarah.
Or
will.
we could just ask Sarah to put together a two-liner to remember to come up and maybe a link to this.
If interested.
Ulysses, I mean.
Send that out twice.
Right,
Monday
you
Sending out
say,
twice, right.
Go to
Same
town meeting,
message, and
please
here's a
support
link
the school.
Dan, I would have read your email if it came through, but Tracy's right. There's plenty of people that are going to say this is too
The
long.
warrant number, like, I know the capital.
So when I wrote this, the warrant hadn't actually been published. So we can, that's a good.
And I don't know if solar lease request, we should start with the one big beautiful.
Where's the warrant? Yeah, I actually changed that on my own version.
Like, you're starting off in a negative tone, Dan. Let's start off with we want to be sustainable.
Well, I do say the one big beautiful was gutted.
Solar.
You know, subsidies.
I was going to start it with, well, I did have the one big beautiful accident, but I had it slightly different.
You deleted it all.
I didn't.
Can we just ask Sarah
I copied
to
and then started
immaterially,
changing.
AKA, not add any more information, just reduce.
Just delete.
I don't have authority to.
Yes, second.
Okay, good. Motion.
Hold on, though. Your chart. Placido Miller roof
Yes.
request. Is there some sort of separation between these two numbers?
That was what Frank was confusing. I said I would fix that. Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to make sure I understood.
Numbers next to each.
That was so. I took a chart that Dr. Jordan put together. So really, this is his fault.
All right.
No, it's not his fault.
I'm kidding.
I think, Sarah, whatever you do, show where we stand on it and why they should support it, not paragraphs. More paragraphs.
Okay. When do we think this should, Monday?
And we're going to send one Thursday.
Monday's a holiday. How about
Holiday.
Tuesday? Is Tuesday okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Yes.
Tuesday and Friday.
Monday's a holiday, so everyone's watching your email.
Could we, what was it, Tuesday and maybe Monday morning?
Good, okay.
Mine to go to town meeting.
Which is
Yep.
also when isn't Tuesday also when we're sending out the,
Survey.
yes, the notice to be watchful for the survey.
Yeah, no, Wednesday we're sending out the notice for Thursday opening.
So they're going to get an email every day from us.
Yes.
Okay.
Just gonna.
You know, if they can't, the community will be happy. We are communicating with them on a daily basis.
We do important, read this one. And then the next one, no, we're not kidding on this one. Really read this one.
I think Tuesday or Wednesday for this one would probably be best.
Okay, so that's why it's good
Sunday?
if we come up with a plan so we don't.
No, because Sarah
harass
needs to
every
work on it, and then she has to send it to Dan, and then it's, they have a day off on Monday, and it's not going to go out tomorrow. So, and then he'd have to send it for it to be.
Does it make
Sunday
sense to
or
send this Tuesday? I'm just wondering, if people are going to go to town meeting, if they're going to go to town meeting, send this actually closer.
No, people,
They might have questions.
and they
that
may need
are-
to plan. Just for anyone watching at home, there will be babysitting available. And it's probably where I'll be, but
Good. Actually, yes.
but okay, we'll send it out Tuesday morning, and but if anyone is watching this at 10:12, this is very important. In all seriousness, these are all of our requests are incredibly important, but the roof in Plaza Neo Miller and just getting that going, whether we receive the grant or not, is incredibly important. There is some legitimate debate about timing and all that, but I think the surety of funding is really a critical component to all these things. And given how tight the budget looks and how tight sort of how our capital position is, we just want to make sure that we have this so that we can, we're prioritizing, the safety and well-being of our students and staff. And I think that's
Winter's coming, freezes over, causes more issues, so we got to get fixed as soon as possible. But it won't be for
correct. Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve this letter with Sarah's edits and how she decides to send it out Tuesday morning.
So we're approving Sarah's letter.
We're approving this as the start to the cutting of
Your masterpiece.
my masterpiece.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Okay, great. At this point, I believe we've gone through everything. Have I forgotten anything? No. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
To executive session.
From which we will not return. I do a roll call vote. Joe?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Hillary? Yes. Tracy? Yes. Dan?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Good night, Holliston.